This episode is brought to you in part by audiobook narrator Mike Scott. When selecting your next audiobook, choose from some of the great titles narrated by audiobook narrator Mike Scott, like Bloody Autumn, the Shenandoah Valley Campaign of 1864. And if you're an author or publisher interested in having your written works produced as audiobooks, give Mike a shout at MikeScottVoice.com. Mike Scott, the voice of history. And Civil War Trails. It's the world's largest open-air museum, and they offer over 1,300 sites across 6 states. Drive the Gettysburg campaign turn by turn, paddle to Frederick Douglass's birthplace, or hike to remote earthworks and artillery positions. Visit civilwartrails.org to request a brochure and explore their interactive map. Follow Civil War Trails and create some history of your own.
You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this episode of Addressing Gettysburg's Ask a Gettysburg Guide. Today, we are talking to Ralph Seigel, and we were talking about the gunfight at the Peach Orchard. Many of you may be thinking, I didn't know Wyatt Earp was at Gettysburg. That's not what we're talking about. Not that kind of a gunfight. We're talking artillery at Gettysburg, and it's Ralph's first time on the show. Welcome, Ralph.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on. You and Bob Steenstra are the two of the patrons that I'm aware of, at least, that are licensed battlefield guides. So we really appreciate that, because that's kind of flattering, you know, especially you. I got to tell you, because I've heard of you long before I ever encountered you, and your reputation precedes you. So then when I saw Ralph Seigel became a patron, I was like, this has to be a different Ralph Seigel. It wouldn't be that Ralph Seigel, but it was you. And so it was a pleasant surprise. So thank you very much for that.
I may have clicked on it by accident, but there it is.
Ralph is also from New Jersey, so the sarcasm will be pretty heavy today, I'm sure. So tell us a little bit about yourself first. I always ask, I always try to remember to ask, but I often fail. When we have a new person on, why Gettysburg?
I came to Gettysburg in the 1990s on assignment from the Associated Press. I was a State House reporter, and we had quite a difficult time with the governor at that moment.
Which was who?
That was Governor Christie Whitman.
Okay, so way back.
Who was withholding her tax returns. And working at the AP, I was on a strict deadline and lost my temper with the people who were jerking us around. And my boss at the time recognized, a news editor for the AP, recognized that one of two things were going to happen. I was either going to break something and get arrested, or he was going to send me away for a few days. And so he said, you know, you did a story a couple of months ago that New Jersey created an endowment fund for the monuments at Gettysburg. Why don't you go out there, spend some money, expense a couple of meals, sit at a hotel room, and do a story for the Sunday papers on what these monuments are that we're paying for. What do they represent?
Okay.
New Jersey at Gettysburg. So I came out and I hired a licensed battlefield guide. She's still out here, Joy Bowden.
Oh, yeah.
Her and her dad, both guides. And I still say hi to her when I see her. She doesn't remember me and doesn't remember that event. But I said, this is so cool. You do this. You get to go around the battlefield. You tell stories.
Right.
I just think thought it was the coolest thing. So I learned a little bit more about it and brought my wife out on a trip, and we talked about it, and I began preparing to take the exam. 5 years later, I took the exam, and I'm almost positive that the people who were grading the exam did it wrong, because I scored enough. When you take the written exam, it's changed a little. I took the exam in 2002. They hadn't given one in several years, so it was a big group. And you're not allowed to take notes during the exam.
Right.
But they're written essays, and I was a writer. So I blew through the essays in about, 11 minutes while everybody else is scratching along trying to explain, why Robert E. Lee named his horse Traveler and all of this.
Right.
And so I had enough time to go through the exam and write on a piece of paper all the questions I got wrong, which you're not allowed to do. And I put them in my pocket, which you're not supposed to do, and took them home so I would know which ones I got wrong. And the exam came back, and I was 14 points away from the top score. So I said, okay, somebody did something wrong.
Right.
Actually, I got a letter on Christmas Eve from the Park Service. Said, okay, well, here we go. They're gonna tell us how bad I did.
Right.
And I opened the letter up, and it's gonna say I passed or I failed, and it doesn't. It says, "We're here to inform you you are oral qualified."
Oh,
Jesus. Like, pardon me? I'm oral qualified?
Oh, God.
So I called my friend Mike, who lived in York, Mike Vallone, the co-author on the book we did. And I said, I'm oral qualified. What does that mean? He says, it means you passed, you moron, and just don't tell anybody because they obviously made a mistake if they ranked you high enough.
Right.
And
Now, admitting this though here, that's not going to get you have them rescind your license because you admitted that you took notes and took them home with you, is it?
That's a good point. I now regret bringing that up whatsoever. So,
how long have you had the license
thanks
for?
for that. I got my license in 2004. And I became good friends with the guy who was the supervisor of the guides, and he gave me, because I was commuting from New Jersey.
Who was that? Was that Clyde?
Guide, Clyde Bell.
Yeah, he was great.
Yeah,
Clyde was a great
lot of
guy.
the guides didn't like him.
Really, I liked
but
Clyde.
I got on with him very well.
Yeah. Clyde was very helpful to me in I think it was my last year of owning Gettysburg before I sold it and moved. Bob Steenstra was my go-to guide, but he was riding, I think, from the Canadian border to the Mexican border that summer with his buddy. He's a crazy bike rider, cyclist. And so he wasn't going to be there for me all summer long. And all the other guides I had were always in a pinch type of guides. And so I was like, oh no, I'm going to lose my business because I don't have the right. So I talked to Clyde, and he went down the list of people who had recently taken the test but passed the written but failed the oral.
Yeah.
And I won't name who, but he made a special dispensation for or an exception for a certain guide who was close but no cigar. And so he ended up saving my ass that year. So he was a good guy. I was very sad when I heard he died. The
2002 exam, and then we had what they still call charm school. We all had to come out for the weekend, and they told us all the park rules. And then they started scheduling the oral exams. And a few months later, in April of 2003, it was the spring muster, the Friends muster.
Yeah.
And all the guide candidates at the time always came to the musters. We all knew who was taking the exam. We all knew each other. There was a group of 4 of us that worked together on studying for the exam. And my friend Mike Vallone was the highest ranking of the 4, so he was ranked 4th and got his license first.
Do you recommend that people study together with another
absolutely.
person?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you test each other and go through your tour plan. And so, what was I?
Well, you were talking about the 4 of you, charm school.
Right. We went to charms, and then the spring muster comes.
Oh, spring muster, right.
And so I show up at spring muster, and Mike, who's the size of a linebacker, he's walking over to me ashen-faced.
Yeah.
And I go, what happened? And he goes, the guy who ranked number 1 on the exam, perfect score, washed out on his oral. And I said, yeah, but he gets 2 cracks. He says, no, he washed out on both. And we were like, oh my God, the guy who ranked first in the whole class failed his orals. None of us are going to pass.
Right.
They're not going to give anybody a license. I didn't know Jim Hessler at the time. He was actually ranked 3. He was ahead of Mike Vallone, and he got his license, and then Mike did. And so all of us would pile into Mike's car to do his oral exam. Said, show us what you did. And he didn't have much of a car, so it was quite a scene. All 4 of us jammed in there.
Yeah.
And he would run us through his tour, and I did that quite a few times.
But a high score on the written does not obviously doesn't mean that you're going to do well on the oral. Those are two different skills.
Absolutely two different skill sets. The Park Service still sticks to that. Today, they've inserted an interview process.
Yeah. And what's that for?
The park should discuss that. You should ask someone from the park. Let me make that, Chris Gwynn or Angie Atkinson or someone.
Is it more of a personality thing, like before they go on and waste their time with the oral?
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah,
that's a good way of putting it.
But I think it's a great idea to do that because you're as a guide, you're an ambassador to Gettysburg National Military Park.
That's a pretentious way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is there are people who pass the written exam who have no business being near anyone else.
Correct, and a bookworm.
Never mind in a car.
Right. I mean, a bookworm does not a talk show host make.
Exactly.
And, yes.
And that's what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And they wanted the interview process they inserted to try to lower the burdens on the oral exam, I think. They should say what they have in mind because it didn't exist when I did it. So now they are ranking more people, twice as many as they used to, but they're weeding out a lot of people in the interview process.
Right.
Like they'll ask you difficult technical questions. They all ask the same questions in the interview process, like, why do you want to be a battlefield guy? And okay, we're good. We'll move on to the next question. Never mind. Which side was Robert E. Lee on?
Right.
And
if you say the right side, immediately you're out.
He was on my side. Me and my brothers, and I'm like, okay, thank you, thanks very much for coming in. And, so I think that's what the process was for, because they saw they had people on the oral exams. I'm kind of sorry they did it, because a lot of the guide examiners, guides would be one of the examiners, will tell these fantastic stories of people on the oral exam. One of my favorites from Rich Core, I don't think he would mind me using his name. He told us the story of a guy. He was in the car on the tour. Him and Clyde Bell were pretending to be the tourists. And the guy drove down to the traffic light at the Tawnytown Road. He has yet to say a word. So he doesn't say anything about driving over Cemetery Hill. He doesn't say anything about Abraham Lincoln and the Gettysburg. He doesn't say anything.
Right.
Drives down, stops at the red light, sits there, and the first words he utters are, "Is this damn light ever going to change?" and like Clyde said something like, "We can go back now. We don't really need to keep going."
So that's it. He failed right out of the gate.
I mean, so they want to see that you can handle being in a car with people who want to know exactly where Buford was standing, which has happened to me.
Right.
The kid with the bookmarks in
the
Buford biography.
Yeah.
And then these other people who are not sure the difference between the War of 1812 and the Civil War, and that you can handle both of those without alienating them, that they can have a good time.
Sure.
I mean, it's a battlefield. It's the bloodiest battlefield of the 19th century in the Western Hemisphere, but you gotta have a good time.
You gotta have fun while you're walking on all that blood-soaked ground.
Sure. If you can't laugh through the cemetery, what's the point?
Well, I think that would be the one place where it's okay to not laugh.
I got him cracking up in there. Who's the William Coe? I think. Don't hold me to that. I'm pretty sure his name is William Coe. In Michigan, he's buried in 3 different places. The same guy.
Really?
Yeah, it's 3 different grave markers marked with the same name. So I get people to stand at the 3 stones, and I point to them. Okay, when I point to you, read out the name of the guy. 1, 2, 3, and they all say the same name. I says, okay, 2 of them are wrong. That's
interesting. I didn't know that. All right. Well, thank you for. So the why Gettysburg is because the AP sent you here.
Yeah, I just these people get to go around and give tours and tell stories.
And you like that idea?
I was always a storyteller, and I just thought this would be so much fun to do this.
Yeah.
I brought my father out on a tour. He said, "You're nuts. This would be boring. I mean, I've been here once. We're good.
Right.
I don't need to go to Gettysburg again." I'm like, no, I'm going to come out every weekend and take people on a tour. You get to meet people. I have had guides who've said things like, I get so tired of doing the same tour, day in and day out, Oak Hill, Little Round Top, Fish Hook. And I don't get that. Now, I'm a weekender, so I only came out, not some of these guys do more tours in 1 year than I do in 10 years.
Right. You can appreciate it more.
But each interaction is different. The people are different that you're in with. They're different questions. You could draw them out, get them engaged. And, I've had a couple of nightmare tours, but not so many. Most of them have been a real privilege, and they're a lot of fun.
Sure, yeah. And I mean, it sure beats sitting in an office, doesn't it?
It does.
Even on the rainiest, snowiest day, it's probably still 10 times better than sitting in an office.
Well, on the rainiest, snowiest days, I'm at home in New Jersey, watching the Giants look for a new coach, which seems to be something they do every 2 years now for the last decade.
The one thing I don't miss about Jersey is the shame of a Giants football season. Yeah.
Well, we do have 4 rings, so let's not get too underexcited.
But when was the last one? When did we get the last one?
Never mind.
Yeah. All right. So,
a while ago.
Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Make sure that you have your notifications turned on. Also, if you use the Apple Podcast app, please leave a 5-star review. Also on Spotify now, you can leave 5-star ratings, not reviews. They don't let you do reviews, but you can rate it 5 stars, so please do that. I know Spotify is our second most used platform next to Apple Podcasts. Reviews, liking, sharing, and subscribing are the best ways to help us grow our audience. Also, our live show, which is normally on Fridays, is moving over to YouTube. So if you catch the live show it used to be on Facebook, now you go over to YouTube, find it there. Hopefully YouTube will be better to us than Facebook was. Facebook sucks. Okay, so we're talking about the artillery at the Peach Orchard. And I was telling you before that I'm coming into this cold. I know nothing about specifically the artillery at the Peach Orchard, except to say that when I go up there, and I bring a friend or someone who's never been there to illustrate what kind of a mess that position was. Right. I point to those 2 batteries, one facing south, one facing west, right at the corner of you know what I'm talking there?
You have the 2 Napoleons that are facing west.
Yep.
And then you have James Thompson's rifles facing toward the Peaches.
Okay, yes.
Which is a little weird. But if they had them facing the other way, they'd be facing their own troops.
Right,
so I guess they had no real option.
Yeah. I'm sure they weren't literally right in that spot, but in that area. Is that right?
It is true on the entire battlefield. I'm sure you've discussed this with others on other shows, that the monuments are a judgment call on where a monument is located as to where the regiment was, where the troops were.
Roughly.
Roads play a big role in the location of monuments because these guys raise the money to put up a monument, and they're going to put it along the road so people can see it. Somebody wants to put the monument. Well, our fighting position was 100 yards over the hill. Yeah, we put a monument over there, and nobody will ever see it, okay? We're putting $3,000, $4,000 into the monument. We're putting it on the road.
Right.
Well, we weren't at this position. No one invited you. Shut up. This is where we're putting the monument, okay?
Yeah.
One of the beautiful ones on Emmitsburg Road is the 1st Massachusetts.
Uh-huh.
That gorgeous triangle. It's not a triangle.
Isn't it the one that's shaped like a tent? No, that's on.
And it shows a skirmisher stepping over a fence with the fence down. It's where the Rogers house used to be. Yes. A big diamond shape.
Yeah.
And that's the one place the 1st Massachusetts wasn't. And in fact, they have markers out in the field where different companies were actually located on skirmish, but they put the monument right on the road. It's an enormous, beautiful granite monument, because they want people to see it. Mm-hmm. The artillery monuments are the same. Mm-hmm. Almost none of them are in the quote-unquote correct place.
Right.
Now, I don't actually like that phrase. They are in the correct place because they're in the Gettysburg battlefield.
Yeah.
And we can interpret them. We can tell people, okay, this represents this battery. Let me tell you where the battery was and what they were doing.
Right.
And another issue is that they are moving.
I was going to say that, yeah. They can move around.
I think the most interesting comparison. The word artillery can be off-putting because people think of what they know of artillery being today, and it couldn't be more different. Civil War artillery was closer to modern-day armor.
Well, you mean like tanks? Yeah.
Tanks shoot at what they can see,
right.
What we call direct fire.
Direct fire, yeah.
They move with infantry, and a tank can't be on its own without infantry troops because enemy troops can climb all over the tank. It's very dangerous to run into infantry.
It's vulnerable.
And they coordinate with the soldiers, don't run them over, but, make sure that they're close at hand.
Yeah.
You're protecting each other. That's very much what Civil War artillery is like. Highly mobile, gets around the battlefield, integrates with infantry. Modern-day artillery is miles behind the battlefield.
Right.
The biggest mobile gun is the 155 millimeter. I think it's called the Excalibur. Could park outside your studio and fire a shell into Chambersburg.
Jesus.
A nuclear shell, in fact.
Can't imagine that.
That's not what artillery is in the Civil War. So these guns are highly mobile. They're moving all the time. They keep their horses close at hand so that they can limber that gun up and get it moving. My interest in the peach orchard goes back to our work with Mike Vallone. And Mike and I produced this tour guide book focusing on the peach orchard, which I'm showing to the folks at home.
I'll hold it up for the
And that
camera.
one's yours.
It's all right.
You got the picture there.
Yeah.
Eric's got a still of the cover already.
Here's
Perfect.
one for Eric also.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
And
Much obliged.
Love getting
I was hoping Mike would
free
show
stuff
up.
from the guests.
Mike might have this, but if he doesn't, let's
I will give it. I will give it to Mike.
Mike
yeah,
gets
absolutely.
that one,
Thank
so
you.
there
6
you
questions.
go.
Lentz gets his own copy.
The
All right.
Peach Orchard. He was on my gunfight walk.
Well, he told me that you recognized his name and asked from the radio show, and he got confused because technically this is a
It's not radio
podcast.
show. Right.
And so he said no at first.
Yes.
But
And
yeah,
Mike is easily confused.
And I'm glad you said that. So yes, right. It'll let
Poor
you-
Mike. All right.
No, I was looking forward to seeing him here today. I'll have to drive out to Chambersburg and get some Chick-fil-A.
There you go. There you go. All right. So then the artillery. So first Sickles puts himself out there in that position, I guess is where we should start, right? He moves the artillery out. What? Go ahead.
Let me roll you back.
Roll us back.
Let's talk about these cannon.
Yeah.
Because my theory, which I've done on many tours and is in this book, is that the artillery fight at the Peach Orchard, I call it a gunfight, which is not a Civil War term. Got to be careful. Let everybody know. A gunfight, the phrase gunfight doesn't enter the military lexicon until the Air Force starts deploying fighter planes that carry missiles.
Interesting.
So in the Vietnam War era, the Air Force would start to refer to gunfights as close-range aerial combat because they're using their guns because they're too close for missiles. So
then prior to that, in a dogfight, were they throwing dogs at each other?
Gunfight is a term that dates back to the dime novelists with Wyatt Earp and all of this, and so I've completely appropriated the wrong term and confuse everybody hopelessly. But I like it. I like gunfight at the Peach Orchard because these cannon at the Peach Orchard are shooting at each other.
Sure.
Because the infantry is not in position yet.
Uh-huh.
As soon as the infantry starts crossing the field, the guns are going to shoot at them.
All right, well, now, hold on. Let me stop you here real quick.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure. So when Sickles moves out,
Yes.
the artillery goes out first, is what you're saying?
No, they go out with him.
With them, but because they're drawn by horses, they get there a little faster.
Well,
Or-
they're out there at the same time.
Oh, they're out there at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
They're out
so
there at the same time.
out there at the same time. Confederates, are they in the area yet at this
No.
point? Longstreet's men, I mean.
They're not arrived yet.
They've not arrived yet. So Sickles is going out there. He's setting up his corps. Okay, so I just wanted to get
Right.
that in the audience's head. Okay, go ahead. And mine.
So I believe this artillery fight, the gunfight that occurs at the Peach Orchard, is the largest gunfight of the American Civil War.
Interesting.
And people will say, well, what are you talking about? It's not even the largest artillery action at the Battle of Gettysburg.
Right. I was going to say, what about
On
Pickett's
July
charge?
3rd, we have this great cannonade. And I would argue that's not an artillery fight because they're too far out of range.
Okay. It's a bombardment of infantry positions.
It's artillery fire, but they are not target shooting. They're not shooting at each other. They're not really shooting at anything.
Got it.
And I always need to emphasize on my tours, sometimes I forget, that we're not saying anything these guys don't know, which is why Robert E. Lee uses, his long line of 6 miles is a disadvantage in 50 different ways. But the one advantage is he can put guns on that whole line and they can all fire concave collected at a single point, which is what he does. 150 cannon firing at one point on the battlefield, thinking he'll break them up. And they can't because it's just too far. They can throw ammunition that far, but they can't really hit anything.
Can't be effective.
When we go on tours, we like to go up to Oak Hill, where there's those nice Confederate Napoleon cannon, the bronze cannon. And we point to the McPherson barn, the big white barn. That's exactly a mile from Oak Hill.
Okay.
And we'll say, this gun can throw a shot that far. And people will say, wow, that's far. Question is, can he actually hit that barn? and it's a 50-50 proposition.
Right.
The gunners have lots of issues that they have to deal with when they're firing a cannon. When I do these tours, I don't want to do too much of this in the studio, but I go out there and I show them some of the equipment and talk about how difficult it is to fire these guns accurately. And the more you learn about how difficult it is to fire the gun, the more you realize that beyond 1,000 yards, you're essentially just throwing ammunition hoping it hits something, which they all know, which is why they mass their artillery. You're going to have 6, 12, 18 guns all firing in the same direction. Somebody's got to hit something.
Right.
Closer range, now they are able to shoot at what they're aiming at. And that's why I call it a gunfight. Now, when Sickles moves out, or I don't even like to use the word Sickles. When General Dan moves out,
General Dan,
with his forces, and the Confederate forces arrive on Warfield Ridge.
Right.
They're 500, 600 yards away from each other.
Yeah, pretty close.
That's close enough to hit each other.
McLaws' division has to stop. The 1st Division marching in, Major General Lafette McLaws, they were supposed to march into the peach orchard and form battle lines and strike the objective of the day, which is Cemetery Hill.
Right.
They get to Warfield Ridge through the woods, and they look, and there in the peach orchard in front of them are brigades with artillery. In fact, one of the batteries, the New Jersey battery, opens fire as soon as they see McLaws. They're looking across the road, and they say, hey, look at all those guys on horses with spaghetti on their sleeves. Those are officers. Let's kill them. And they start shooting. And McLaws says this.
It's such a Jersey thing.
The interesting thing is, this is why I love the research, none of them tells about this in their official reports.
Okay.
But McLaws, in an article in the 1880s that goes in Century Magazine and a speech that he makes, will say, as soon as I showed up, artillery was shooting at me. It has to be New Jersey. They're the first battery up there. So 1st New Jersey Battery B, they're from Newark, New Jersey. Captain Judson Clark. We have his picture.
Oh, yeah.
Judson Clark. You put his picture. There's his picture.
There he is.
He is the best-looking man in the American Civil War.
Let me see this. Hold on. You have his picture there?
Judson Clark. When we optioned the movie, George Clooney will be cast to play.
Which one is it? This guy here?
Yeah, I see. You picked him right out of the pile, Judson Clark.
All right.
He's a superb artillery. He goes on to become the police chief in Newark. This crew was raised in Essex County and Newark, but they got their guns in the town where I live in Mercerville at Camp Olden. That's where they got their 6 Parrott rifles and their training and equipment. And they've had a good combat record up until now. So this is a veteran battery, and they're the first battery that goes out to the peach orchard.
I don't see how he's the best-looking man in the Civil War. I don't see it. He looks like everybody else to me. Where did you come to with that conclusion?
I was just holding it up and seeing how the ladies react during walking tours. Osmond Taylor's not bad looking, but the picture has black spots all over his face, where Clark's picture is nice and clean. And oh, come on, look at him. It's just,
well, I mean, he's not bad looking, but I wouldn't say him best looking.
And he avoided those lamb chop sideburns that everybody seemed to think were cool looking.
Yeah, we're happy about that.
Yeah, 100 years later, we're like, what? But
all right, so the artillery opens fire on McLaws now, mentions it.
Right. Now, artillery,
yeah.
If infantry's moving toward them, they shoot at them.
Yeah.
Because those guys have bayonets and guns and stuff, and
right.
if they get up here, they're going to kill us.
Yeah.
What makes the gunfight at the Peach Orchard unique is the infantry's not attacking because McLaws holds in his position. He was supposed to lead the attack into the Peach Orchard. General Longstreet is moving out with 2 divisions. McLaws is first. Hood's going to come in with him. McLaws is going to march out to the Peach Orchard, advance towards Cemetery Hill. Hood's going to come in as support. Well, McLaws can't go anywhere. So now Hood's division is going to move further south along Warfield Ridge, and they're going to lead the attack. So the plan A is gone. Plan B is Hood leads the attack into the Peach Orchard. McLaws supports him. This takes time.
Yeah.
Hood has 7,400 men in 4 brigades. It takes time for them to march through the Eisenhower farm. They tour the house. They talk about Eisenhower. They see the ranger tells them where a helicopter used to land.
Right, like, where Monty stayed.
Helicopters? What's a helicopter? That's great. Why can't we get those? And they are marching through the Beesucker farm, of course, for people who are scratching their heads.
Right.
And this is going to take time. The guns deploy first, and they start banging away at each other. And so for 30 to 40 minutes before the infantry's in position to draw the artillery fire, these cannons start firing at each other. Let me get back on the cannon for a moment and how hard they are to shoot.
Okay.
If you stand at the muzzle of a gun, which I do when I do the tour in the field, you hold an artillery piece and you drop it, it takes a half a second for it to hit the ground.
Okay.
If a gun is fired, it's the same half a second. Mm-hmm. So if the gunner fires his gun level, in half a second, his shot is hitting the ground. So what that means is he's got to elevate his barrel, which means he's not aiming at his target. He's aiming at a magical spot in the sky to drop his shot in on the target.
Right.
And in the case of a Napoleon, the 12-pounder Napoleon, the charge comes out, the solid cannonball comes out at 1,000 miles per hour, faster than the speed of sound.
Yeah.
Loses a third of its energy every 600 yards. And after 16 to 1,800 yards, comes to a dead stop because it's lost all of its energy. So not only is the poor gunner aiming in the air, he's aiming downrange to drop his shot in because he knows his shot's going to slow down when it comes out of the barrel.
Right.
He has an additional problem that engineers call Cant. K-A-N-T is the word. Cant, meaning you can't hit what you're shooting at. Cant, the Park Service, if you visit the battlefield, you see those cannons out there. They're sitting on little concrete pads to keep them level. The world is not flat like that.
Right.
So these guns out on a field, they're going to be at a slight tilt, left or right. Maybe only a degree or two. But now you're elevating your barrel. You're not elevating your barrel on a true up-down axis.
Right,
you're elevating slightly off.
Yeah.
And therefore your shot goes slightly to the right or slightly to the left. These guys know that. They have gun sights with pendulum weights that offset the tilt.
Okay.
They leave them in the wagons. Nobody uses them anymore. Nobody puts gun sights. By 1863, the cowards and the shirkers are all gone. This is not the Battle of Antietam where guys are running around, don't know how to load their rifles. These are hardcore soldiers. They're veterans. One of the reasons the battle is so bloody is that the guys who don't belong here are long gone.
Yeah.
And the same is for these gunners. They don't aim these things anymore with all the devices. They can, but they aim by dead reckoning. These gunners know how their guns behave, and they know their ranges. They deal with this tilt, the cant. They deal with loss of velocity. They deal with the elevation of the barrel. And you got to remember, this gun kicks back 10 feet after it shoots.
Sure.
I like to tell people, if you got 100 kids, you're lining them up to pick them for the Civil War. You take your 5 football players, and they go to the artillery because they now need to grab the handles on the trail or the spokes on the wheel and roll this gun back to where it was. So the gunner, who did all this aiming, has some hope of replicating the shot he just made. On top of that, the fuses are not reliable, particularly on the Confederate side. The 2-second fuse has a way of burning out in 1 second, or not lighting off at all. There was a fire at the Tredegar Works in Richmond, and a lot of the batteries coming into Gettysburg are carrying fuses that have been brought up from Georgia. And again, remember, dead reckoning. They don't care what the numbers are on the fuses. They just know how to act. Well, they've got different fuses now. So this makes life really difficult. And the ammunition. There's a lot of things that we look back in history. Radios have been around for how long? But can you make one? Can I make a radio?
No.
I mean,
No.
Can I make a cannonball? No.
No.
The cannonballs are made on a rack with a mold where the molten iron is poured into the mold, and the rack is carefully turned and counterweighted so that it
is round.
Well, no, round is the mold.
Yeah.
So
What you want to
even
do is,
thickness.
as it cools, you want to make sure you're distributing the metal within the cannonball.
Got it.
Because your armory is making 5 cases of ammunition a week. And then you get orders to produce 50 cases a week because it's the Confederacy.
Yeah.
And, I can't do 50. Well, just do it faster. And so now you're using water to cool them down. You're turning faster. And what this will create is an imbalance inside the round that we call eccentricity.
Okay.
If you X-ray the shell, you'll see that the density of metal is different in different places.
Okay. Yeah.
Which means if you take and I have one of these at home, a Confederate 12-pounder solid. Should have brought it with me.
Yeah, that would have been cool. Well, next time.
An idiot. But
what'd you call me?
I brought the Peach Orchard book. Did I mention that? $21.95 at For the Historian. It's a good start.
$21.95 for the Historian. And by the way, you mentioned Addressing Gettysburg. You get 20% off.
Ooh, and you get 20% off.
Yeah. So go ahead.
So
the other thing,
if you roll this cannonball at a bowling alley, it'll start to turn.
Yeah.
If you fire this cannonball that has eccentricity, it starts to wobble in the air and goes left or right.
Right.
Rifle shells, which are packed with gunpowder or packed with case balls and case shot, they can pack and shift their weight balance on the road in the limber wagon.
Okay.
Because they're not traveling up Route 81 up a nice, smooth, paved road. They're going up country roads where that poor limber wagon is banging like hell, and those shells that are packed in there are all rumping around. The canister rounds are so famous. They're packed in resin.
Mm-hmm.
They're not loose in sawdust. They're
Right.
packed in solid. Why? To keep those balls from compressing one side or the other.
Yeah.
Same thing with the shells, but it doesn't always work. So if a shell becomes eccentric, when he fires, it tumbles. It starts tumbling in the air, and it goes all sorts of places.
Ass over heels, in other words, going forward as opposed to left or right.
One of my famous quotes, one of my favorite quotes, I actually haven't memorized, but I'll read it anyway to make sure I don't screw it up,
Right.
was from the Confederate artillery commander on July 2nd, is Colonel Edward Porter Alexander. And when he gets up to Warfield Ridge and sees Union forces in the Peach Orchard, which he thinks is the main Union battle line, Alexander will say, I hope to make it short, sharp, and decisive. At close range, there was less inequality in our guns, and especially in our ammunition. And I thought if ever I could overwhelm and crush them, I would do it now.
Okay.
So, at close range made the difference there. And to finish the quote, but they really surprised me, both with the number of guns they developed and how they stuck to them. I don't think there was ever in our war a hotter, sharper artillery afternoon than this. So this is Alexander saying this is not July 3rd.
Right.
This is July 2nd, that this is the sharpest artillery fight he'd ever been in.
Yeah.
And
it's pretty good authority.
This is I believe, personal opinion, that he's the leading Confederate artillery officer of the war. So thus Alexander, and I thought when I read his books, he has two, one edited by Gary Gallagher, and I read those, I said, well, this is something. Something happened here. My hometown battery, their monument, the picture says 1st New Jersey Battery B Monument. There it is, but Eric will show a better one, I think.
There you go. Yep.
That monument, I love to take people to that monument. You know, as a brand new guy that just got the license, got the shirt, Mike Valone would say, once you got the shirt, you can do what you want. And I would take people, you know.
Mike Valone, man.
You know, and it's been crumbling in the last 20 years, but back when I started guiding, back when I started guiding, Little Round Top was the thing.
Yeah.
Little Round Top is it.
Yeah.
Indeed.
And that, oh, I'm sorry. And that has slid, that has started to crumble around the edges a little. People are starting to recognize that not everything on July 2nd was centered on Little Round Top.
Right.
That Longstreet, for instance, James Longstreet, commander of the 2 divisions, 1st Corps, didn't actually know what Little Round Top even was.
Right.
Tom Berenger certainly knew what it was in the movie.
Yes.
But it's not clear that James Longstreet knew nor cared about Little Round Top.
Yeah.
It's gotten a lot of attention right immediately. You know, it was one of the first areas that the GBMI acquired. And so Little Round Top has been important in the park's history and historiography, but not necessarily so important on July 2nd.
Right.
And the peach orchard to us has been, you know, elevating in value. More and more people recognizing the importance of the peach orchard. So I was very proud that not only I would take my tours to the peach orchard, I'd take them down to the first New Jersey Battery beam. We stand by that monument. The monument says on it that this battery fired 1,300 rounds.
Jesus
on
Christ.
July 2nd. The actual number is 1,342.
Wow.
That is the most.
On just July 2nd?
Yeah. In 4 hours.
Wow.
So that is the most artillery fired by any single battery on any single day, the entire American Civil War.
That's
And
crazy.
these are my hometown boys. Well, not literally hometown.
Right, yeah. Close enough.
But they got their guns in Hamilton, so we feel like, you know, in Mercer.
Well, where's their battery? Is that Sickles Ave?
That's where this monument is on Sickles Avenue. And I
okay.
would pull up there and take people, and they'd see the monument. I would tell them, yeah, it's fired more artillery than any other. Oh, they're the best battery from the Joe. Oh, that's great. And people nodding their heads, and they're all happy, you know. And I do this for like 2-3 years.
Man, that means each gun fired 224 rounds.
Yeah, and they only go into action with 200 in their chests, because they were resupplied out there. Their ammunition driver drove out with his wagon to bring out more ammunition. Wow. These guys were wailing away. I'm convinced that this is the battery that disabled John Bell Hood.
Why?
Because of the angle that they were firing at Hood's men. They were firing perfect defilade, perfect side angle fire.
Okay.
No one can ever know. I mean, nobody can identify a piece of shrapnel that ripped his shoulder open. But generally, most people assume it was 4th New York Independent that was on the Devil's Den or above the Devil's Den. Mm-hmm. But they're firing into an approaching line.
Right.
If you shoot short or long, you're missing them.
Right.
When the Texas Brigade, which Hood led, he was the division commander, but he marched into battle with his old brigade, and he's only one guy, he's got to be with somebody. He's coming down toward where the Michael Bushman farm is, and coming down from the Emmitsburg Road. They are presenting their flank to the peach orchard.
Right.
And Clark, I could just see him like pee himself. He says, "Oh my God, look at this. Load." And they are firing as fast as they can. All 6 guns, right in perfect flanking position. Let's get them before they disappear into the Rose Woods.
Right. Yeah, they have
Let's
a limited
shoot at them
amount
while
of time.
we can.
Yeah.
Well, they had a lot. Remember, there's a lot less woods back then than we have out here today.
True.
And he just wailed into them. And if they shoot long or short, they're hitting somebody. Mm-hmm. And there's no way to know. Then they swung a gun around and fired at the Trussell farm and hit Sickles. No, I'm dead. I'm kidding. Jim Hessler made this point in his appearance. The guys in the Third Corps thought General Dan was fine.
Yeah.
Clark will say that after the war.
Sure.
General Dan was a good general because he's a fighting general. He's out in the field with them. These guys love McClellan, and they love
Fighting Dan
General
Sickles.
Dan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now the monument to the New Jersey Battery there, it's on Sickles Avenue.
Right.
But and maybe I'm wrong. I have to go stand there and think. But in my mind, for them to fire south, they would have to probably get up on the Peach Orchard Hill.
3 years it took me to figure that out.
Yeah,
3 years, and finally on a
3
tour,
minutes for me.
I'm
3
standing
minutes.
next to the monument on a tour, and Dad, I don't know if he was Dad or Uncle or whatever he was, but he's standing there not saying anything. And everybody's oohing and ahhing, and they're touching the cannons delicately, and they're taking pictures of each other, and they're reading the inscriptions that I'm pointing out to them, and I'm very proud. Now, this is one guy standing there. He's not saying anything. And I said, you said they fired up on the Emmitsburg Road, and then they fired at Hood's troops when they're crossing, the gap that the Emmitsburg Road has. That's where Clark starts firing into that gap when he sees Hood's men going through. Sickles rode up and told him, see those guys? Shoot at them. I can't see that from here. And I'm standing there like, what? I can't see what you're talking about. We can't see that from here. And so we get back in the car and we finish the tour. The angle. They didn't get them. They paid me, give me, not that good. And I get Vallone out there. I get Mike Vallone out there, and I said, I go out to the 1st New Jersey. He says, they can't see anything from here that they're shooting at.
Yeah.
And I will never forget this because Mike would say, man, are you effing stupid? And we got Eric out there, Eric Campbell, who said, they can't be here.
Right.
And Eric is an expert at telling people where somebody was not. That was his claim to fame.
Okay.
McGilvery's line that most of the Rangers will tell you where it is, they're wrong. Eric figured out where they were. They're all the way up by the Trussell farm on that little ridge above Plum Run, what they called the Plum Run line.
Okay.
Eric really sorted this stuff out on July 2nd, and we're standing there and saying, well, where are they? And so we open up a book by an author who won't be named. This is, 15 years ago. And we look at the map, and that author had moved Clark out of the hole where the monument is up to the road. I was like, okay, well, that's good. Let's go up there. And now we're right in the peach orchard. I was like, well, what's he shooting at here, the peaches? And we figured out that Clark had to be, I have a map, I think a map that says 1st New Jersey Battery B, this map, not the monument, it just says 1st New Jersey Battery B.
Oh, yeah.
And the yellow arrow shows where the monument is, and the yellow bar shows where we think the battery is.
Oh, okay.
They're actually in front of the peach orchard, right over where the 3rd Michigan Monument is, the southeast corner of the peach orchard.
If you're watching the video right now, it's that long yellow bar at the bottom of the screen.
That's where you think they went.
Yeah, because it's the only place that makes sense for a battery to fire more ammunition than anybody else in the war. They obviously have to see something that they're shooting at.
God, yeah, really.
So,
what was the average expenditure of rounds in the other batteries that were out there?
I don't know.
I wonder how much. I wonder if 1,300 is a lot for compared to everybody
Buckland's
else.
battery didn't fire 500.
Okay.
So right next to him.
Okay.
So these two factors, the number of ammunition they fired, the attitude of Alexander, showed me that something happened out here.
Yeah.
That was exceptional.
So when the firing starts, who opens the ball? Is that
the very first battery to get out there? You'll remember we've talked about this before. Sickles doesn't know. General Dan doesn't know what's going on up there. He's back there in the swamps in his tent. He's sending messages back to General Meade. General Meade sends his son back. What don't you not understand? And he doesn't understand anything. I think General Dan is utterly confused about where he's supposed to be, and I fault General Meade for that. Although I give him a lot of credit for what he did here, more than many people do. But he's not perfect, and this is one of his imperfections. He's not really looking to his weak link. He's got 6 West Point trained, experienced, top-shelf Corps commanders. And then he has General Dan. And he should be paying a little bit more attention to what General Dan is doing.
Right, right.
So General
Needs
Dan,
watching.
The cavalry leaves. So General Dan sends out United States sharpshooter skirmishers and the 3rd Maine to go find out what's in the woods in front of the peach orchard. And they run into trouble. They get hit by Alabama Brigade, get driven back. And so General Dan's question has been answered. The Confederates are right at the edge of Seminary Ridge. They may be in the Pitzer Woods. That's where my threat's going to come from. And General Meade doesn't see it.
Okay.
And that's why he moves up. And he moves up to the high ground to what I believe is the first actual battle line he's taken at all. Before that, he was in camp. There's no line that he ever perceived that he is supposed to be on.
Okay.
This line of the fishhook, I don't believe Sickles has any clue what that's supposed to even be.
Why don't you believe that?
Because the evidence doesn't show it.
Okay, so you think he was just in an area from here to
camp.
there,
He has
and
two
they
brigades,
were camped.
He has 2 brigades that come in late in the day. He has 2 brigades that come in at midnight after counter-marching all the way to the Black Horse Tavern by accident and almost starting their own civil war over there.
Yeah, they should have stayed out there.
And they have 2 brigades that stayed in Emmitsburg and don't show up till 10 or 11 the next morning.
Uh-huh.
And they're just basically in camp around the George Weichert and Abraham Trossel farms. They're not in anything, in my opinion, that resembles a battle line.
Okay.
There is a general who will file a report claiming there's a battle line. Mike and I went in circles with this, Major General David Birney, who says at 7 a.m. we took the line that General Geary left.
Just not too long before.
The problem, not too long, is actually 2.5 hours, and
Right.
Geary never had a line. He was in column of regiments.
Okay.
He had a couple of regiments out in front in the Valley of Death.
Just in case.
Whoever named that, the Plum Run Valley. He had a regiment up on Little Round Top. They all left at dawn. 7 a.m. is many hours later.
Yeah.
We came to the conclusion that David Birney is telling a tall tale in his official report because he knows that Meade expected a fishhook position to be established. And so he's filing a report saying we did. Because he's afraid, Sickles is out. Sickles, and he doesn't want the mud to splash on him. And
Right.
he succeeds. He does not get fired.
Right.
But nevertheless, got a little ahead of it.
Well,
But
yeah,
Sickles. So now this fight in the morning in the Pitzer Woods, Cadmus Wilcox's Alabama Brigade gets surprised by this Union attack that comes through the Pitzer Woods. They're in the Seminary Ridge. They turn, push the 3rd Maine and the U.S. sharpshooters out of there. They weren't there to fight a pitched battle. They were there to feel out where the Confederate Army was, and they found them.
Right.
So Wilcox brings those 2 Alabama regiments back, and he sends his veteran regiment with his veteran commander, Lieutenant Colonel Hillary Herbert, and he sends the 8th Alabama to face south at the Pitzer Woods. You cover the southern flank in case this happens again. The rest of us are facing the way we're supposed to be facing because we're going to go attack and up the Emmitsburg Road. It'll be great. But you keep the southern flank. And he says, I could use some artillery out here. So they take from the division artillery, this is 3rd Corps, Richard Anderson's division, they take a battery from their artillery. It's called the Sumter Battalion. 3 batteries. They take 1 battery. He has short-range guns, 4 howitzers and 2 Napoleons. Another battery that has big long-range guns but has 1 howitzer says, hey, George, take my stupid howitzer with you. So Captain George Patterson actually deploys with the 8th Alabama with 7 cannon.
Okay.
2 Napoleons, 5 howitzers.
Okay.
And they're just covering the South. Now, all day long, stuff's happening, and Patterson, they're all watching like, wow, look at all these guys marching out to the Peach Road. Wow, here comes the division. Wow, here comes the Longstreet. Did you guys know this was going to happen? Nobody tells them this.
Right.
So poor Patterson, he's out there with 7 guns aiming at the peach orchard, watching all of this happen. Now Sickles moves up, and he brings up, he deploys 3 brigades of David, the 1st Division, David Birney's division, 1 brigade to the peach orchard, 1 brigade to the wheat field, 1 brigade to Houck's Ridge, which is above the Valley of Death, Plum Run Valley. He gives each brigade 1 battery. Not that necessarily makes sense, it's just what he does. And he keeps the Rhode Island battery, 1st Rhode Island Battery E, Captain John Buckland, Lieutenant John Buckland's battery, in reserve by the Trossel Farm. So there's 4 batteries. Clark is in the peach orchard on his own. And Patterson's like, this is interesting. And here comes McLaws. And Clark starts shooting at McLaws. And so McLaws stops and deploys his 14 guns of his battalion to his right, to his south.
Okay.
And that's Henry Coulter Cabell. We have his picture. Henry Coulter Cabell's battery.
You say Cabell.
Yeah, I learned that from a Virginian.
Yeah.
I think Miss Janney talked about this on the tour. I mean, on her program. I called him Cabell for like 18 years.
That's what Charlie calls him.
And I had a University of Virginia faculty member on a tour who said, you're pronouncing it wrong. And I'm like, well, how do you people pronounce him? So he's called Cabell.
Yeah, Cabell is how I always said it. And then one time Charlie
I've
corrected
been saying Cabell, and he says, no, it's Cabell. It's Cabell Hall because he helped start the law school, and Cabell Hall's where the law school's located. Okay, then. So there's 40,000 University of Virginia Cavaliers who call it Cabell Hall.
Yeah.
I'm good with
Let's
that.
go with them.
We'll go with them.
They would know.
Yeah, we don't want to start another war.
They're the college-educated ones, not
So
me.
Cabell puts his 14 guns south out toward the Snyder farm. McLaws wants the guns over there so that they're not near his infantry. Because he figures if they start shooting and the Union shoots back, the Union shots are going to hit his men.
Right.
So the closest part to the peach orchard has no guns at all. They all swing out far to the right, all the way as far as the Philip Snyder farmhouse. 14 guns out there.
Okay.
As Hood is deploying, he puts 2 batteries into position. 11 guns total at the southern end. So now we have Patterson over there watching all of this. Cabell has deployed 4 batteries with 14 guns. Major Mathis Henry deploys 2 batteries with John Bell Hood's division. And so when Clark shoots at Hood's men crossing the road, Cabell starts shooting back.
Okay.
And the gunfight starts. And 4th New York Independent, which is above Devil's Den, they can also see Cabell's line. And they start shooting. And then Patterson, who with his 7 cannons says, well, these guys are all shooting at each other. This looks like a war. And they open up and they start firing. And Clark is like, I'm getting shot at from 7 different sides here. And he calls up help. So the Rhode Islanders come in. They go in where the Sherfy farm by the barn is. And then the first of the reserve batteries come in.
Okay.
1st New York Battery G, Captain Nelson Ames. They're the Napoleons that you talked about that are up. They're reserve.
Okay.
They're not part of 3rd Corps. 3rd Corps has used up all its guns. Now there's more batteries coming in from the reserve. And they will eventually recognize that sending in a battery one at a time is not enough. And they call up an entire reserve brigade. And that's Lieutenant Colonel Freeman McGilvery's brigade. They will deploy 3 batteries, 2 on the Wheatfield Road, 1 right into the peach orchard, and a 3rd will stay in reserve where the Rhode Islanders had been.
Okay.
James Thompson's battery stay in reserve by the Trossel farm. Longstreet, meanwhile, gets up to McLaws's line on Warfield Ridge. And we have a map. I think, I forget what I called it, but it was this map, Eric. You viewers at home, there we are. And yeah, you can have it. And it shows all the batteries that I'm mentioning on there.
Okay, all right.
And Longstreet comes up.
Leave this up for a bit, Eric, so people can see as he talks.
Longstreet comes up and says, how come there's no artillery here? This is the closest spot to the peach orchard. And McLaw's like, well, if they shoot, they'll hit my men. And it's like, are we having a war or not? I mean, I don't know what he says. I'm making all of that up. But Longstreet...
Did he sound like Jackie Mason like that when he answered him?
Yes.
I don't know, but they'll hit my men.
Longstreet is like, I want a battery placed here. And Alexander hears him right away, and his battalion is in line back on the Eisenhower farm, Besecker farm, sorry. And he deploys 4 of his 6 batteries, a total of 16 guns, and he brings them up. And they start opening fire, and so the Confederate line will have 48 cannon. The Union line has 38 cannon, and they're just shooting at each other. That's 86 guns
just going on,
banging at each other before the infantry has started to move across the battlefield. Eric Campbell disagrees with me that he doesn't think McGilvery's brigade has come up yet until they come up when the infantry's already attacking.
Okay.
I don't think so, but Eric could be right, in which case it's only 70 guns. It's still more than any other battle of the war, looking at 2 sides.
Sure.
At Malvern,
very close together.
At Malvern Hill, the Union has a lot more guns, but the Confederates only deploy 1 or 2 batteries at a time. At Franklin is the same problem. At Antietam, the guns are not within range of each other. The Union will have some 20-pounders that they're firing up from the Pry Farm and other locations right into the Dunker Hill line where Stephen Lee has his battalion. That battalion is the one that Alexander's in command of at Gettysburg. And Alexander will write a letter home to his dad where he says, at Gettysburg, I lost more men and equipment in 40 minutes than we lost all day at Antietam.
Wow.
And Antietam is what they called artillery hell.
Yeah.
So this is really, and it didn't last more than 30 minutes or 40 minutes, because once Hood is in position and begins his attack, those guns are going to swing barrels. Humphrey's division, Andrew Humphrey's division, which is back behind the Emmetsburg Road, will move up to the Emmetsburg Road with 12 more guns.
Okay.
And they'll open up, but at that point, that's when Patterson gets out. Because Patterson's shooting at the Peach Orchard. The Rhode Islanders are shooting back at him. Now, all of a sudden, 12 Napoleons come in right on his flank.
Right.
Time to leave.
Yeah, and he's where? About the...
He's over by the Pitzer Woods with the 8th Alabama.
Spangler Farm area? Like behind...
Much further south.
Oh, like...
Much closer. He would be in line with the Staub Farm, except the Staub Farm isn't there anymore.
Where was the Staub Farm?
If you go out the back of the Sherfy farm and walk about a quarter mile, that's where the Staub farm was. There's a tree there now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there used to be a lane that led up to it from the Millerstown Road. Lane's gone, the farm's gone, they're all gone.
It was just right out there in the middle of the field then.
Yeah.
Okay. So kind of like amphitheater area.
Not that far.
Oh.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, not that far.
Kind of towards the Louisiana Memorial, right?
Not that far either.
Okay.
Halfway across.
All right.
Florida?
No. Like split. If you drew a line from Louisiana Memorial to
the Sherfy farm. Yeah, halfway.
About halfway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe a little more north of that. But yeah, that's the general vicinity. You can see if you stand behind the Sherfy farm and somebody tells you there used to be a farm there called the Staub farm, you can see where it would have been. Because there's a group of trees and there's a clump of junk.
Got it.
Sure. And there's 2 fence lines intersecting.
Okay.
There used to be a road leading up to the Staub farm. That's all gone.
Interesting. So much stuff that used to be that is no longer. For all the good work that they've done in preserving and restoring, there's still so much that I'm learning about that is no longer there. Constantly. That was
and
there.
this is what makes the battlefield, to me, great and history interesting, is because you can go out there with a different perspective, with a different set of ideas, and develop your own thoughts, your own theories as to what happened.
Yeah.
The book has controversial ideas in it. The tour guide we did backwards. I am in the process of writing the hardcover that is the companion to the tour guide.
Okay.
Mike and Eric Campbell were going to write a book about the Peach Orchard. I wanted to get involved. They said, stay away. You don't even know where the 1st New Jersey Battery B was located without our help, you moron. Eric Campbell took a job in the Shenandoah Valley, opening a brand new federal unit, which is very exciting for a historian. So he left, and the Peach Orchard book never happened.
Okay.
In 2016, I learned that Mike was terminally ill. He had given up guiding a couple of years earlier because of fatigue. He was misdiagnosed. And when I found that out, I found him in the park. I was doing a cemetery tour, in fact, and he was sitting on a bench waiting for me. He didn't have the stamina to walk on the tour, but he waited for me. And we decided at that moment to resurrect the Peach Orchard Book Project that him and Eric had put on the bookshelf.
Okay.
Or on the work shelf.
On the
Never
shelf.
Right.
Yeah.
That winter, I became concerned. His prognosis was not good. He thought he had a few years. It wasn't going very well. And so we decided to switch the order. Instead of working on the main text and then to be followed by the tour guide, which is what you have.
Right.
We switched the order and did the tour guide first.
Okay.
So the problem with that is that there's no footnotes in the tour guide. The footnotes will be in the main text. And in footnotes will have the arguments in them as to why we think this battery was here and why these things are different.
Right, okay.
And we understand that this is not the conventional wisdom, and that people do not agree with. And our argument is, and that's history.
Yes.
That's what we're supposed to do.
That's how it works.
You know?
Because none of us were there.
A guy I wish that Mike had gotten to know, and a guy who's been something of a guru to me, is Dennis Fried, a retired Park Service historian at Harper's Ferry. I went on a tour with him a few years ago, and he stood there and he said, "I've been giving tours of the Antietam battlefield for 30 years, and what I've been telling people's been wrong." And I'm like, well, drop my pants. I've been telling the nerve to be able. You got to get him on. You should try to get him on.
What's his name?
Dennis Fry.
Yeah.
To have the comeuppance, and he explained it. He says there were 3 baseline books that were written about the Battle of Antietam that we grew up with, that we had on our nightstands, that we read as kids, and that we absorbed that story.
Yeah.
And looking back on it now, that story is defective.
It's all bull.
McClellan is slow. McClellan is stupid. McClellan screws up because no one likes McClellan.
Right.
You know, he runs against Lincoln for president.
Right.
He says phenomenally racist things.
Yeah.
And the low point of his entire career, he runs and wins his seat as governor of New Jersey.
Oh, I'm glad you brought it up because I was going to.
Which is where he's buried, right in Trenton and Riverside Cemetery.
And was New Jersey the only state that he carried too in the presidential election?
Oh, that's a good question. He did carry New Jersey.
I know he
I don't
did.
know if it's the only one he carried.
But it would have made sense
think
that
was.
New Jersey was the only state to go the wrong way.
It should have been the only one he carried. It's a riot because when I worked at the State House, which I was at for 10 years, they have a statue of the Salem
Which
Lincoln.
Oh.
It's when Lincoln didn't have a beard as a young man.
Oh, yes.
They have a little
yes.
bust in the wall.
Yeah.
And they also have portraits in the hallways of all the governors of New Jersey. And McClellan's portrait was right next to Lincoln's bust.
Really?
And I said to them all, says, whoever did this is not a historian.
Or has a horrible sense of humor.
You got to move some of these paintings around. At night, I'm trying to work when you were all gone, and we hear the 2 of these guys going at each other down here. And I did find the State House has been renovated, and they moved McClellan's painting. They heard my, like I had anything to do with it. But
how many terms did he serve as governor?
Just one.
Just one.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, New Jersey figured out who they elected and said, like,
once
okay,
was enough.
we're good. But because McClellan suffers from the same thing Longstreet does. Post-war revisionism. Well, I don't think Longstreet was a personal jerk. McClellan was.
Right.
So it's easy for people to say, well, he's he does this, he does that, he's a lousy general. When, in fact, at Antietam, he did exactly what he intended to do. And he figured out that Robert E. Lee wanted to move up the Hagerstown Pike. So the night before the battle, he moves his biggest corps into position straddling the Hagerstown Pike. Mm-hmm. And for the first time ever, and I told this to Dennis, standing as, the cornfield fight finally makes sense. Why did he send so much muscle and firepower into the cornfield when he's, in theory, just defending his line against the Union attack of an army that's twice his size? Why isn't he just holding his line on the ridge? Why is he moving forward and attacking in the West Woods and at the cornfield? because he's not trying to hold his line. He's trying to break out on the Hagerstown Pike and move north.
Yeah. Okay.
And McClellan saw it.
Okay.
And stopped him.
Hmm.
I'm like, wow, Dennis, that is different than, yeah, it's different than everything we've said. So learning a lot from Dennis on the fact that you can constantly look at the assumptions that are made and change what you're looking at and constantly reinterpret history, which is why the people who love to come to Gettysburg 5, 6, 7 times a year, that's why they may not even realize it, but that's why they're here.
Sure, yeah.
Because they're walking across that field. One of the great, I don't have it written down, but one of the great reviews that I got of my Peach Orchard book, which is $21.95, also available on Amazon. And if you go on Amazon, there
and
are
also available at addressinggettysburg.com/books.
And
Don't mind us. We're just plugging away.
And at the For the Historian.
And for the historian, you get 20% off. Can't give you any discounts on Amazon.
We're going to have
yet.
to charge Larry extra for this episode.
I know. Yeah, he's getting more commercials.
Sold out at the visitor center, and the bookstore won't order more. I don't know why. Somebody knock on the door.
Well, that's because they want you to go to For the Historian for your 20% discount when you mention Addressing Gettysburg. So you were saying?
Yeah, I forgot what I was saying already. It just flew right in one ear and out the other, which happens to me a lot. Like I said, I was retired.
Well, okay, so let's get this. So the fight, the gunfight. Let's get to the gunfight. Okay, so the gunfight, it goes off. You've got what 86 guns going
or
on.
70,
or
but I
70.
think it's 86.
Either
doing
way,
nothing but shooting at each other within range.
right. So what kind of a mess did that make? How? I mean, because we hear about, the bombardment before Pickett's charge and all the overshoots.
Yeah.
But what about during this one, closer range,
the
better
Confederates,
visibility, I'm assuming.
The Confederate guns did not succeed in breaking the Peach Orchard line, and the Union guns did not succeed in preventing the Confederate attack. So as is so often the case, as much as we love the cannon, it's the infantry that resolved the issue.
Sure. Did the cannon inflict a lot of casualties?
One has to think so.
But we don't know
how
sure.
can you? I have a regiment of 400. I've got 180 killed and wounded. How many of them are killed by artillery fire?
I don't know. Did anybody mention it?
No one knows.
Yeah.
No one knows. We know Hood got hit by a shell because he's a famous guy.
We do know that.
So it all becomes kind of a butcher's errand, trying to figure out what caused what carnage.
Right. Right. When the fact of the matter is, there's
one of the officers leading the 21st Mississippi, Benjamin Humphreys, unfortunately has the same name as a Union officer, Colonel Benjamin Humphreys. We don't have his picture. After the fighting, and the 21st Mississippi sweeps through the Peach Orchard and drives. He's the regiment that attacks Bigelow's 9th Massachusetts Battery, the famous rear guard action. Drives them all the way back over the Plum Run, gets stopped cold when McGilvery's guns opened up, goes back into the Peach Orchard. They've done what they needed to do that day, and there's his son-in-law sitting against a peach tree, wounded in the gut and bleeding to death. And he sits down next to him to talk to his son-in-law. His daughter is in. They're all Mississippi people, but they're friends with the Davis family.
Okay.
So his daughter is actually in Richmond as a guest of the Davises. And there's her husband. And did he get hit in the gut by a bullet or by a bayonet or by artillery? Who cares?
Right.
Now, when the Peach Orchard line breaks, Alexander now advances his battalion.
Right.
He has 4 guns that have been 4 batteries that have been firing. He has 2 more that were in line. All 6 of them now, a rare event in the American Civil War, an artillery charge. 6 batteries charge across the 600 yards, wheel around, unlimber the guns, and open fire.
What a sight that must have been.
I can give you a quote.
All right. I'll take it.
Alexander himself. All 6 charged in line across the plain and went into action again at the position the enemy had deserted. I can recall no more splendid sight on a small scale, and certainly no more inspiring moment during the war than that charge of these 6 batteries. One of the battery commanders, Dr. William Parker, Captain Parker, the Richmond Artillery. Cannoneers mount forward. Quickly we rushed between the already moving wheels and nimbly sprang into our seats, all except John Hightower, who missed his hold and the great heavy weight rolled over his body. Did we halt? No.
Ouch.
This is the grim discipline of war.
Man, what a way to go.
Osmond Taylor's an interesting battery, the Bath Artillery, 4 Napoleons. Some people speculate, I think you had one on your show, that they may have played a role in Alexander finding his way through the countermarch. The Bath Artillery ordnance officer, the guy who makes sure that the ammunition, in case the limber wagons are running out, he goes back to the ammunition supply,
right,
and he makes sure the guys, he's the officer in charge of all the guys at the limber wagon, making sure they're not screwing things up.
Sure.
Was Sergeant Henry Wentz, who grew up at the John Wentz farm.
Yeah.
Right there at the peach orchard. Dad, Duck, stay down. No, they got out. And there's some speculation that he may have helped Alexander. I don't really buy into it because it's like Alexander's leading his battalion. He's got his deputies and his chief battery officers. Hey, let's get that ordnance guy up here. Maybe he knows where we are.
Yeah.
Alexander figured out where he was looking at the ground.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And he cut to the left, and the trees concealed his movement.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference, even though he does have, 100 vehicles and wagons and all of the, there's a difference between that and a division in column of march.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of following Alexander, which people will say McLaws just goes back, and it's Longstreet, it tells them that they go back to where they started. Because they're in view of Little Round Top, which no one expected. And this is sometimes understated by historians, but you learn from the military people that the essential ingredient of a flank attack is surprise.
Absolutely.
Because if you lose surprise, guess what? It's not the flank anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
By the time you get there,
you're not attacking the flank.
The flank has moved.
Yeah. So, okay, so the duel ends and
right. Well, the duel ends
that,
because Texas starts moving.
Right.
And Georgia starts moving behind them, and the guns swing and start firing. And the other division in the 3rd Corps, Brigadier General Andrew Humphreys, moves up to the Emmitsburg Road with his 12 cannon, and that's the ones that Alabama will attack. Cadmus Wilcox's brigade. But remember, he has the 8th Alabama facing south.
Right.
So when Wilcox launches his attack against the area on the Emmitsburg Road where the Klingel farm is, hitting Andrew Humphreys' division, it's only 4 regiments moving forward.
Okay.
The 8th Alabama reminds me of that scene in Black Hawk Down where the 2 machine gunners are at the corner saying, I think they've forgotten us. They're looking up like, where are they going? And so Hillary Herbert turns his brigade or his regiment around, but they launch like their own attack,
right?
Separate from, and they will actually attack toward the Trossel farm, and they will help suppress Bigelow's battery. The Alabama guys will come down what is today Trossel Lane and attack Bigelow's battery from the rear while Mississippi's hitting it from the front.
Ouch.
Hillary Herbert tells this heartbreaking story of one of the wagoneers, one of the drivers in Turnbull's battery, which is one of the batteries that was with Andrew Humphreys. And when they retreat, they go in 2 separate directions. Some of their guns go up the Emmitsburg Road. Other guns go out the way they came, across the fields, and they get tangled up in the Plum Run, in that thicket over behind the Trossel farm. And there is a driver, a kid, he describes him, who is thrashing his horse, because the drivers, they ride the horse they're on and they control the horse that's next to him.
Right.
And he is thrashing his horse and the horse next to him, and he can't get through the muck. He's stuck. And Herbert Then this is a Union kid. But the Confederate officer, who's a father, goes riding down to tell him the horses are dead.
Oh, Jesus.
You know, get off the horse. Get out of here.
Yeah.
And just as he gets to him, a bullet hits the kid in the back and kills him.
Oh.
And he doesn't know who it is, but Herbert tells that story.
Right.
And so that's the way they went. And that's, you know, that helps, that story helps us locate where Herbert is.
Sure.
And he's leading the 8th Alabama down into the Trossel farm.
Yeah.
And I would think that we have that photograph. Eric, I did add it. I don't forget what I called it. The Trossel farm horses. Yeah. That famous photograph of all the dead horses. Who can know this, but I think there's more Alabama bullets than Mississippi bullets
in those horses. Yeah. All right, well, that makes a lot of sense.
You want a tank to stop moving, you throw an explosive into the tracks.
Right.
You want a gun to stop moving, you shoot the horses.
Yeah.
You know, they can in some circumstances pull these cannon off by hand, but
I wouldn't want to do that.
It happens in the peach orchard.
Yeah. Doesn't Bigelow's battery have to retreat by prolonge or something?
They retreat by prolonge, but in the peach orchard, James Thompson will finally aims as the New Yorkers get out, and Thompson deploys. The peach orchard gunfight is over. This is now just the overall battle, and James Thompson deploys his battery. This is an interesting story, Captain James Thompson, and he deploys his guns. 1st Pennsylvania Battery C and F. They were 2 separate batteries at Chancellorsville, but Captain Hampton was killed, and so the batteries were merged.
Okay.
At the Peach Orchard, they have 2 different monuments because the veterans, 2 different veterans associations, and after the war, they came back and put up 2 separate monuments, one for Battery C, one for Battery F. The Battery F monument has the beautiful statue on it.
Okay. And that's what's the name of that battery?
The 1st Pennsylvania Battery C, and the next
commanded by.
Both at Gettysburg are commanded by Captain James Thompson.
Thompson, right? Okay.
And they basically get overrun. And then, as the Mississippians run past them, they get up and pick up one of the cannons and haul it off by hand and get out of there. You know where the famous 73rd New York monument is?
Yes.
That's the firefighter holding hands with the soldier. Mm-hmm. That monument is there because they charge forward during the retreat to recapture another one of Thompson's guns. So Thompson loses his whole battery and gets them all recaptured.
Okay.
And that's what, and it says it on the back of the monument. This is where we recaptured one of the cannon. They don't know what the battery was, but that was all James Thompson. So they 1890s. So that 30 years after the war, the 2 separate veterans organizations are in Pittsburgh, and the secretary of the veterans organizations for Battery F, Hampton's artillery, is a Casper Carlisle, who helped Thompson haul the gun off by hand, doing what Captain Thompson told him to do, and Thompson was with him. And Thompson writes a letter, affidavit to the War Department, and gets Casper Carlisle awarded the Medal of Honor for his heroics in extracting that gun. To show unanimity between the 2 separate veterans organizations, of which there was a little strife. It was like, well, you were part of our battery. No, we weren't. We're our own battery. We're gonna have our own monument. Okay. And so this was the payoff, as he got the Medal of Honor for Carlisle, and he got it. He was awarded the Medal of Honor in 1890 something for doing exactly what Captain Thompson did. But he doesn't get the Medal of Honor because,
it's all who you know.
Little bit of politics and that sort of thing.
With everything.
Make sure all the veterans are happy.
Yeah. All right. So, what's his name? Alexander gets his guns up there. Right.
And he charges forward, and his guns will just blast the Union forces that are retreating. The 1st Minnesota, that famous attack of the 1st Minnesota.
Right.
2 of the most famous casualties of that attack are Private Isaac Taylor His brother would be out on the battlefield the next day looking for him. The two brothers were very close, Isaac and Patrick Henry Taylor.
Okay.
Isaac Taylor was killed by an artillery shell that hit him in the head.
So it was going to be hard to find him.
The Colonel, James Colville, is wounded in the spine by artillery shrapnel. And he falls into the Plum Run Creek. And because the creek bed is dug out in the ground, bullets are whizzing overhead. He says, if I hadn't fallen into that creek, I would have been killed with the bullets zipping by. And Willard's brigade, when they withdraw after hitting the Barksdale's men, Captain Willard will have his head blown off by an artillery. This is all Alexander.
Yeah, okay.
Alexander puts the cannonball hole through the front of the Trossel farm. And I was joking before, Alexander is the one, his shots are the ones that take off Sickles' right kneecap.
So
and
it's
eventually his leg. They are spraying artillery all over the battlefield from the Peach Orchard position.
But you say that he took off Sickles' leg. So Alexander's men were up on the Peach Orchard hill.
Well, this is 6 batteries.
No, but I'm saying
so they're from the Peach Orchard all the way out to the Trossel.
But that's
lane.
what I'm asking.
Right.
So they're up on that ridge, I guess I should say. By so I always thought that Sickles was hit by an overshot from when they were.
Yeah, a lot of people say that.
Yeah, but no. So you're pretty sure that it was while they were up there. Oh, you're positive
because the 141st Pennsylvania Infantry,
right?
Their monument's right at the Peach Orchard. When you walk up the little steps, that's the monument that no one looks at. Is right there
when you walk right by it. Yeah,
that regiment suffered heavier losses by percentage than any regiment in the 3rd Corps.
Okay,
70%.
The 3rd Corps.
209 guys, 150 down.
Damn.
And Medill, the commander, Colonel Henry Medill, is retreating with like 20 guys toward the Trossel farm. He's off his horse. He's carrying the bullet-ripped flag. He's got 20 guys. There's another 30 guys went in a different direction, so he'll get them later.
Okay.
But he's got 20 guys, and General Sickles comes up to him and says, "Can you not hold?" And Medill will say to him, "With what men?" Now, the reason that's important is because the line has fractured. The 141st is the last regiment, more or less, to get out of there, and Sickles is still on 2 feet.
Okay.
So at this point, there's no overshooting anymore because you're overshooting into your own men because the Confederates have overrun the line.
Very good.
This is Alexander's guns now come charging up. But the heartbreak, let me tell you, well, heartbreak. I feel heartbroken for him. So Alexander, as his gun, he's not in front. You go, Taylor, go, Parker, go, you guys go. He's making sure everybody's getting their guns limbered up. 24 cannon.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Racing across this ground. Alexander's coming behind him.
Quite an undertaking.
The whole time, he thought this was the Union line. The whole time. So the quote from him, "Now we saw our heaven just in front, and were already breathing the very air of victory. Now we would have our revenge and make them sorry they stayed so long." And he gets up to the Peach Orchard, and what does he see? When I got to take in all the topography, I was very much disappointed. It was not the enemy's main line we had broken. That boomed up near 1,000 yards beyond us, loomed up near 1,000 yards beyond us, a ridge giving good cover behind it, and endless fine positions for batteries. My gun stood and fired until it was too dark to see anything more, and both sides were glad to stop and rest. It was evident that we had not finished the job and would have to make a fresh effort in the morning. So that sets up what's to come tomorrow.
Yeah. And
Pickett's charge. So Alexander has gained the Emmitsburg Road and the Peach Orchard, and those guns will be part of the great cannonade that blasts into the Union line on Pickett's charge.
The people that say that history is boring, that whole thing that you just did there with how you determined that, or how it's been determined that Sickles lost his leg after the Confederate artillery was up on the ridge. That's what makes it exciting. That's what proves that it's not boring, because you're like a detective.
And
if you like detective shows, ladies and gentlemen, you should be a historian.
Time becomes impossible to keep.
Yeah.
Because these guys don't synchronize their clocks. They don't synchronize their watches. I really learned this in the Adirondacks, where in the town where we go to, a little village we go to, there's this famous diner known around New York called the Noon Mark Diner.
Okay.
And it's called that because behind it is Noonmark Mountain, because the sun hits it at noon. In the Adirondacks, there are 4 Noonmark Mountains. So in that town, that's noon.
That's noon,
You
yeah.
move another 10 miles, it's not noon
not.
yet. We're waiting for this. They don't think of coordinating of time zones until the railroad schedules post-Civil War.
Post-Civil War, yeah. Well, that makes
Right.
sense. You don't need them.
And so you set your watch in Richmond, so one guy says it's 1:30, the other guy says it's 3 o'clock. We like to trust Professor Michael Jacobs because he had a clock in his house, and he hears the booming, and all the china starts moving around. He's
Right.
like, okay, Pickett's, the bombardment started at 1:09 p.m. Why? Because he's like one of these history nerds. You know,
Right, yeah.
You know, he's an interesting guy by himself, Michael Jacobs.
Sure. But I mean, we got a lot of information from him that we might not have gotten elsewhere, or is very sparse elsewhere.
What we need to do is follow evolutions, going through the records and the letter. What happened first, second, third? That is how you get your time sequence.
Yeah.
So, can anybody say when did an artillery shell hit General Dan in the leg? No, but we know it happened after the 141st was retreating, because Medill says Sickles is on his feet. Now Alexander with 24 guns is blazing away. Being at the Sickles tree, at the witness tree, which is his headquarters, is a terrible place to be.
Right.
So they move from there to the back of the Trossel farm to get away from that gunfire. Sickles is up by the Sickles Monument. Right next to it, looking down at it.
He's like, what the hell is this about?
What is this here for? I got a leg up on this one. And the reason he's up there, he's on horseback watching his guys at headquarters move from the front of the barn to the back of the barn.
Right.
I mean, I don't know what he's watching, but that's what he's doing.
He's over. Yeah, that's what they're doing.
And that's where that shot will come in and ding him in the right knee. And
make
as
his
much
day.
as I was saying, it was a New Jersey gun, and in my weak moments I insist it was, but no, it wasn't. It was one of Alexander's, and we'll say it's Osmond Taylor because it seemed like it was a round shot.
Okay.
And we have a round shot hit the front of the Trossel barn. So they're spraying fire all over the place, but Alexander is shooting up at the 1st Minnesota. He's shooting at any blue mass that he sees.
Can't imagine.
He's engaging Little Round Top.
I mean, it's a great spot, for the Confederates.
Right.
And if you go there today and you look out, like, you can see exactly why they wanted that. I mean, it's you could get everything pretty much from Ziegler's Grove down.
And a key thing with the Peach Orchard, which we probably should have mentioned at the very beginning. So much for having an outline.
We don't use outlines.
If you stand in a peach orchard and you can look at Warfield Ridge, the land slopes down and back up.
Right.
You look to the east and the land slopes down sharply to the Trossel Farm and the Plum Run.
Yeah.
Warfield Ridge can only see the peach orchard.
Yeah.
And if you're down at the Trossel Farm, you only see the peach orchard.
Right.
The Emmitsburg Road Peach Orchard are your horizon.
Yeah.
Today at the Trossel Farm, you can see the treetops of Warfield Ridge, but I'm not convinced you could see them in 1863.
They were shorter trees.
I don't think the trees were that tall, but who can ever know? But the point is, you're not seeing Confederate forces deploy.
Right.
The fact that the Peach Orchard created cover at the intersection of 2 crucial roads, Millerstown Road and the Emmitsburg Road, and it creates cover at that spot, and the fact that it is on the crest of the line that Warfield Ridge can't see what's going on beyond the Peach Orchard, and the Union Line can't see what's going on beyond the Peach Orchard. That's what makes the Peach Orchard so important.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Is there anything you wanted to add to that to tie it up before we go to break and get to the questions?
It's more important than Pickett's charge.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Oh, he said it, folks.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to leave you with that.
It's a much larger attack, more troops involved. It's a longer fight. It's a much longer battle line. It's the fight. July 2nd is where Robert E. Lee lost the Civil War.
I agree with you. The more I learn about Pickett's charge, the more I think
it's big. It's the end. It's the climax. But it's like Little Round Top in terms of, in memory, it gets a lot of attention.
Yeah.
But on the ground, in the battle, did they really have a chance? I think Robert E. Lee believed he had a chance. I don't believe he was doing a fool's errand.
Right.
But we know in retrospect,
it was a fool's
300 or
errand.
400 guys got up to that wall,
out of what, 12,000?
Artillery just tore them to bits because the further they came, the closer they came to the artillery.
Right. The more accurate the shots.
I don't think, and we used to go round and round with people like Paul Cooksey and others talking about Pickett's charge. I don't think 6,000 guys got across the Emmetsburg Road.
No.
No, I don't think they made it that far.
You don't even think they made it to the road?
Yeah.
Really?
I think they got chewed up or they turned around and
and left.
got back.
Yeah, I would imagine a lot of people did that.
Yeah.
All right, well, why don't we do this? We'll take a quick commercial break here, and we'll come back and we'll answer the questions that our beautiful patrons have sent in. You have to be a patron in order to send questions in for Ask a Guides, because patrons know ahead of time what you learn of too late. So go to patreon.com/Addressing Gettysburg. Become a patron. Ralph's one. Why aren't you? We'll be right back after these words.
You've heard us promote various ways that you can help us keep the show going. But one way we haven't pushed too much yet is our sutlery at addressinggettysburg.com/shop. And that's a shame, because we have designs over there by talented artists like Ty DeWitt of 1863 Designs and Mike Stretch of the Heritage Depot. So now we're promoting it. Buying shirts, hoodies, mugs, and other items from our sutlery not only helps us keep the lights on, but it also helps guys like Ty and Mike, and it helps spread the word about the show every time you wear an item or sip from your mug. So please, head over to addressinggettysburg.com/shop and grab some merch. You just might find the perfect Christmas gift for the Gettys nerd in your family. That's addressinggettysburg.com/shop.
Winter is coming, but that doesn't mean there's no reason for you to come to Gettysburg. In fact, there are more reasons for you to come. Don't believe me? How about not having to wait an hour and a half for a table at your favorite restaurant? How about not having to sit in traffic for a half hour just to go 2 blocks in town? Are those not enough for you? Okay. How about seeing the battlefield with no leaves on the trees or corn that grows taller than a man to obscure your views of the battlefield? Ah, now I've got your interest. What about the licensed battlefield guides we have on the show having less hectic schedules to take you on a tour that will enhance that better visibility? Just as I thought. Now you're with me. And now that you are, head over to addressinggettysburg.com/LBG or call 717-693-0182 for large groups.
Our favorite bookstore in Gettysburg is For the Historian, located at 42 York Street. It's because they have the best selection of Civil War books in Gettysburg, both new and used. And online, they have even more to choose from. And if the Civil War isn't your thing, that's not a problem. This is For the Historian, after all. They cover history from the ancient world to the 21st century with a strong selection of World War II and American Revolution books. And it's astounding how many thousands of titles from Osprey, Savas Beatty, UNC Press, and more they have in their store. And that's because, well, they have a warehouse too. And that's where they keep all the books that are available online at forthehistorian.com. And folks, if you go to forthehistorian.com now and order books until you're blue in the face, be sure you mention that you heard about them on Addressing Gettysburg in the Note to Seller box, and they will refund your shipping costs. And if you prefer to stop by when you're in town, well, you could do that too. Just mention Addressing Gettysburg at checkout, and they'll take 20% off the retail price of your item. So go to forthehistorian.com or stop by 42 York Street, or you can call them at 717-685-5207. That's forthehistorian.com or 717-685-5207.
Gettysburg, A Nation Divided mobile app is relaunching this summer. Gettysburg, A Nation Divided is an award-winning mixed reality mobile application using augmented reality technology. It transports users into the most crucial moments in the Battle of Gettysburg, the turning point of the Civil War. Users can listen and watch historic figures share their stories as lifelike animated avatars, traverse 360-degree image sequences of the battlefield. Its cinematic battle sequences are narrated by actor Scott Eastwood. The mobile app is available for free on iOS and Android. It's designed to be used anywhere, at home, at school, at the park, or at Gettysburg National Military Park. It uses GPS to help guide you through your journey to see the stories and events unfold at the exact location where they occurred. So go into your phone's app store and get it now for free. That's Gettysburg, A Nation Divided.
You're listening to the Addressing Gettysburg podcast with Matt Callery.
And we are back, ladies and gentlemen, with Ralph Seigel, licensed battlefield guide extraordinaire and author of the book Peach Orchard, a Gettysburg battlefield guided tour right here. And you can get this, as we've mentioned before, at For the Historian. If you mention Addressing Gettysburg, you get a 20% discount. It's also available on Amazon, but you don't get a discount there. However, if you buy it through our Amazon portal by going to addressinggettysburg.com/books, and you click on that link there, you help out the show with 3 cents or something like that. So, eventually those 3 cents add up to $1. You said to me earlier before we started the show, though, that you had a question about the intro that you would save for the show, and then we didn't get to. What was the question you had about the intro?
Is that really Sam Elliott?
What do you think?
It sounds like him.
Let's analyze it.
You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Do you think? Let me hear one more time.
You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Yeah, I mean, I think it sounds like
All
him,
right.
but I'm not.
That's the idea.
But it's not then.
That was me.
No
I was
kidding.
like, you're listening. No, I can't do it.
Oh, you just played with the
You're
time.
listening. No, I can't do it. No, it's actually, I'll tell you who it is. I don't know his name, and I'm sorry about that, but he is a guy that a production company called Boom Creative out of Pittsburgh utilizes for, they do the video work for Destination Gettysburg. And during the lockdown, Destination Gettysburg put out this really nice, inspirational video. And there was this very, Sam Elliott is narrating it, and he's like, we'll be here when it's all over. Gettysburg, blah, blah, blah. We've been through enough, and, all that. And so I knew people over at Destination Gettysburg. I said, where did you get Sam Elliott to do that? And the lady smiled, and she goes, it's not Sam Elliott. And I said, the hell it's not Sam Elliott. That sounds exactly like Sam Elliott. And she goes, no, I cut the check. Believe me, that's not Sam Elliott. And she's like, she told me who it was. And I said, can you get me in touch with him? Because I need to see if he would do my ID. And so she put me in touch with the head of the production company, Boom Creative, and he's like, well, look, we got a session with him coming up in a couple weeks. Tell me what you want him to say, and I'll ask him to do it as a favor for me. And I was like, that's awesome, because otherwise I'd have to have like a SAG account and all this stuff.
Right.
So it took months because the lockdown interfered with their recording sessions, but eventually he got it to me, gave me a couple different options, and so that's what I use. So it's really not Sam Elliott, but I mean, it sounds like
But
him.
there is no time. I love that one,
That's
too.
really Martin Sheen.
That's from the movie, right? There is no time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that one,
There's
too.
no time.
Yeah.
There is no time. I have told you there is no time for that. There is no time.
Yeah. So then, and then of course there's Bo. Bo's big line.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, anyway, so that was that's the answer to that question. I hope it was a satisfying answer. All right, we're going to start with our questions here from our Canadians. Is what I was going to say. Our patrons. I don't even know why I was thinking Canadians.
Could be Canadians.
We might have some Canadians. How come I can't hear you?
You got
Eric?
the guy who wrote
don't
the
know.
definitive biography of William Barksdale is a Canadian, Doug Ashton.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying Canadians can't do good things. I'm just saying I've never met one.
They just typically don't.
They just typically don't.
Yeah, well,
That's okay. We only have like 6 Canadian listeners,
depends
so
what it's
okay.
a boot.
All right, so JS2 Art. This is a new name by me. I don't recognize this name.
There was no name associated with the email address.
All right. Well, so then this is what, the beginning of their email address?
No, this is just what the ID came across as on my. Oh Christ!
Gmail. Like, in other words, the name that was showing when you in
Holy
your
hell, my Outlook. There it is.
Outlook.
There we
Gotcha.
go, there we
Okay.
go, there we go.
All right. So this person, he or she, wants to know: did Confederates fire canister at Union troops in the Peach Orchard?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which sounds weird because they're too far away, except they tell us they were fired at by canister. Ames, who has that battery that's at the two Napoleons that everybody drives past right at the point of the peach orchard, the northwest corner of the peach orchard.
Facing west.
He says we're getting shot by canister.
Now, but canister's effective range is what, 400?
Yeah, the maximum. But if you elevate it, you
can drop them
throw it. Now, typically, canister was not fired elevated. Canister is one of the ammunitions that the gunners would fire level.
Right.
Because they want the canister pellets to hit the ground that bounce back off. Because if you fire level, too much of your canister sprays into the air.
Okay.
So that's typical of what you do with canister with troops closing in. At a distance, you can aim high and throw the canister up in the air and hope the pellets are going to land out there. When I first read that, I thought, he's confused.
Right.
They're firing case shot.
Right.
And the pellets are coming in from exploding case.
Right.
And I thought that for quite a while until it occurred to me that battlefield guide Ralph Seigel, who did not spend his childhood reading the Civil War, is questioning the report from Captain Nelson Ames, artillery officer in the battle.
Right.
And
Somebody who would know.
Maybe he does actually know what canister might feel like as opposed to case shot.
Yeah.
And who are you to, you do run into that.
Sure.
In interviews and in books where sometimes the historian knows better than the guys who were there.
Right.
And
but not in this case. In this case,
I think in almost no case.
Okay.
I think these guys know exactly what they're doing. Anything we talk about the shortcomings of the cannon and how far they could fire, these guys know that. And as I said earlier, these gunners are firing by dead reckoning. I have the inventory of equipment for 1st New Jersey Battery B.
Mm-hmm.
And they had 1 or 2 pendulum gun sights for 6 cannon.
Okay.
And I think those pendulum gun sights spent the war in the wagon.
Mm-hmm.
These guys just aimed.
Yeah.
Their best gunner takes a shot and yells out loud. The chief of the piece yells out loud, 3 second fuse. And they fire, and 5 other guys are watching.
Right.
And, okay, let's try another one, 2 second fuse, and he yells at the gunner, aim yourself a little left. And that shell goes right in where they want it, and now everyone knows what to do. Cut to 2 seconds, tilt to the right, whatever the case may be, and fire for effect.
Yeah.
They're firing by dead reckoning. Now, are there instances where they set up the gun sights? Yeah, Henry Hunt's riding by. Here comes Hunt. Quick, get the gun sights. Which wagon is it in? I said that one. Hurry up, put the gun sight on there. Because, Henry Hunt, you don't fire more than once every 2 minutes.
Right.
Carefully aim. Take it, once every 2 minutes, once every 3 minutes. And it's like, Henry, you get out here, okay? I got 14 guns from the University of Virginia shooting at me at 600 yards. I don't have time to aim,
Right.
And...
All right. So next question is Tim Dolan. He says, is there any truth to the theory that Sickles took the Peach Orchard position with the desired intention of only facing Confederates to his northwest, being therefore able to use artillery to enfilade any attacks on the Union line across the fields of Pickett's charge to his north? It's interesting because Tim asked the same question on the Jim Hessler Sickles episode. I don't know if the answer wasn't satisfactory enough for him, or he just wants to get different opinions. So go ahead.
Yes and no.
Yes and no, you
First
say.
half of the sentence, yes. Second half, no. Yeah, Sickles, and the Park Service does this up there, and they describe the salient that General Dan has occupied. The salient.
Why do you call him General Dan?
Well, from Lieutenant Dan from Forrest Gump, Lieutenant Dan, and so he's General Dan. I just don't like to give the man too much publicity, you know.
And Lieutenant Dan lost his leg too. That's brilliant. I can't believe nobody put that together before.
He lost them both.
Legs, Lieutenant Dan.
Oh, that's right. He lost both legs. Oh, poor Lieutenant Dan.
Yeah, it's funny. He lost both legs.
No, that's
Well, yeah.
I'm not laughing at that. All right.
And, you know, I'm one of the old sticks in the mud that when I take tours on the north end of the battlefield, I'm bringing my people to Blocker Knoll.
Oh.
Yeah.
Not Blokers or not Barlows.
I'm just not giving Francis the name of the knoll.
Channing.
I'm not giving Channing the credit.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't. You know, we're all supposed to be balanced and objective, but I'm of German descent. I'm actually a German immigrant myself. And Channing can kiss my ass.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Yep.
You know.
All right. Very good. I love it. All right. So back to Tim's question, though. So yes, no.
He's moving up facing west. His line that General Charles Graham's brigade occupies is from the Peach Orchard to the Sheriffy Farm and beyond.
Right.
The 57th, the 105th is to the right of the 57th. The 57th is right in front of the Sheriffy house. His line is facing west. Regis de Trobriand's line by the Stony Hill section of the wheat field are facing west. 17th Maine is on the right of his line. On Hawks Ridge, Ward's brigade, Brigadier General Hobart Ward's brigade, is facing west. Now, there is a strong line of United States sharpshooters under Major Homer Stoughton, and they are forming a skirmish line from Big Round Top all the way up to Rose Farm. They're facing south where there's nobody.
Right.
And these are tough guys. This is U.S. sharpshooters.
They're just not bright.
Well, I don't want to say they're good shots, but if a brigade full of bayonets is coming down the hill, it's time for skirmishers to leave, which is what they do. I don't care what a good shot you are. Those guys, a lot of guys, and those bayonets look scary. We're getting out of here.
Absolutely.
That's the entire left flank of the entire Army of the Potomac.
Right.
Sickles' 1st Division brigades under Major General David Birney are all facing west. There is not a salient. It's when they see Hood's division swinging down to the south that they now deploy forces to face to the south. But the initial deployment that Sickles goes out, they're facing west.
Okay.
Because that's where the trouble was. That morning he sent the 3rd Maine forward. They got into a fist fight in Pitzer's Woods. That's where the trouble's going to come from. General Dan's belief is that General George is focusing too much on the seminary and north and west of the town, and that the fact is the Confederate line is much further down Seminary Ridge than they believed, and that they're right in front to the right, northwest, as the person said, of the Peach Orchard.
Okay.
And that's why General Dan wants to move out. He wants to get up to the Peach Orchard to form a battle line facing where he believes the Confederates are.
Okay.
1st Corps, Longstreet's 2 divisions, are still marching around in circles trying to figure out how to get to their position on Warfield Ridge without being seen. General Dan's already in position before they have arrived. That's why when Lafayette McLaws brings his division up onto Warfield Ridge, the first forces of Longstreet's corps to arrive, New Jersey artillery sitting there waiting, saying, wow, look at all those guys, let's shoot at them. And they start the artillery fire. Only after the battle, well, not the battle, well, the battle begins with the artillery fight. That's when regiments are deployed to face to the south. And the weakness in David Birney's line, the 1st Division, the weakness of General Dan's line, is that he has no troops to put facing south.
Yeah.
So he goes to the 2nd Division, where Brigadier General Andrew Humphreys, an old soldier, he's in his 50s, he's a veteran of the old Army. He has a textbook formation. He's put 2 combat brigades in front and a reserve brigade right behind. So they get hit, there's damage, his reserve plugs in. That's textbook. I don't want to say West Point, it's textbook Army, although Humphreys, not only a graduate, a teacher at West Point. So 2 brigades up in front, 1 brigade in the back. That's what you do.
Yeah.
Amateurs don't know what that is. So amateurs like Birney and General Dan look at that saying, well, look at that whole brigade back there. He doesn't need them. And they disassemble George Burling's entire brigade.
And they go all over the place.
They send the 2nd New Hampshire up to the Peach Orchard to face to the south. De Trobriand will take the 17th Maine, pull it off of his line, and face them to the south. 8th New Jersey and 115th Pennsylvania come out of Burling's brigade to face to the south. 6th New Jersey comes off of Burling's brigade into the Plum Run Valley to face to the south.
Right.
Hobart Ward will take the 99th Pennsylvania, 4th Maine, and move them into the Devil's Den to face to the south. But none of that was their original position. Their original position, they were facing west. It wasn't until they saw Hood's division moving around to their left that they created the salient. But his original position was not a salient. It was all facing west, which means his left flank was completely in the air. It was a terrible battle position. They should have anticipated that something could come from the woods to the left. I think General Ward, who was the most experienced of them, did anticipate that because he's the one who deploys the 2nd United States sharpshooters over there.
Yeah.
Because as a tripwire, that's really one of the main purposes of skirmishers, particularly if they're an empty country where there are no enemy skirmishers. Their skirmishers are out there by themselves. They're a tripwire. They're a warning force. And that's what Homer Stoughton's force is out there. So they're facing toward the west because they think Pitzer Woods and the southern edge of Seminary Ridge over by the Spangler Farm, which Spangler is that? The Henry Spangler Farm, that's where the attack's going to come from in an effort. And everyone's recognized that about the Union position. Hancock himself will say it's a strong position, but it's vulnerable from being turned from the left.
Okay.
And it is, General Meade doesn't run a perfect battle. No general in the history of battles has ever run a perfect battle. And this is General Meade's. He doesn't look to his left sufficiently.
Yeah.
And he's already had trouble with General Dan. Sharp messages to move your corps and get out of our way because everybody's deploying from Frederick, Maryland up north. And the road net is an inferior road net. There's a few good roads, but a lot of them are just farm lanes or, little dirt roads between villages. And it's important if you're moving 7 corps that everybody knows what road they're supposed to be on. And General Dan's corps keeps blocking up the roads because he's not moving fast enough.
Right.
And those are the first messages that General Dan gets from the new General
commander.
Meade headquarters is, hey, step it up, pal.
Right.
You're
talking before the battle as they're on their way.
Moving through northern Maryland, they're already cross with him. Nobody can know this. This is speculation. I'd be interested to hear what Jim Hessler has to say. I don't think he addresses this in his book. But had General Dan not been wounded and out of the Army, I think he would have been out of the Army pretty soon after.
Yeah.
And so, again, Meade, 6 veteran West Point Corps commanders, many of them he knows very well, and 3rd Corps under the command of the amateur from New York City. He should have been paying a little bit more attention. And he ends up riding out there.
Yeah, but it's a little too late. It
is way too late.
I mean, I guess the one defense of Meade is that the first time Sickles asks permission to go out there and he says no, that's it. That's the end of discussion.
Yeah, except that
but then by the second or third time that I'm getting, someone from Sickles headquarters asking to do it, I'm going to go out there or I'm going to do something because obviously and knowing the guy and Meade, just took command, but he's been around long enough to know what Sickles is like.
Yes
maybe?
And no. I mean, he's just taken over Army command.
Yeah.
So as a corps commander and as a division commander, he doesn't think much of Sickles. He doesn't think much of the Hooker cabal. So
that's what I'm saying.
I mean, the very first decision he wanted to make was to deep six Dan Butterfield.
Right.
And he wants to get Andrew Humphreys to come up and be his chief of staff. And Andrew Humphreys will tell him, you can't do that right now.
Right.
You can't make an administrative change.
Yeah, as we're trying to find the enemy.
You can't change a chief of staff right now because orders are flying and these guys are copying the orders, and you can't just disrupt this bureaucratic operation. Yeah, but I really don't like that guy. Yeah. Well, I understand you don't like him. And the battle is hardly over when Butterfield is out and Humphreys gets promoted to Chief of Staff of the Army and Major General. Mm-hmm. This I talked about earlier, that we think David Birney filed a dishonest report. What I didn't mention there was that throughout the battle on July 2nd, David Birney is giving Andrew Humphreys hemorrhoids. And Humphreys is going from furious to seriously enraged over Birney's orders. There's 5 artillery batteries in the 3rd Corps for 2 divisions. Birney's division gets 4 of them. Humphreys gets 1. So Humphreys has issues.
Sure.
Now, in August, Birney is filing his report to Humphreys. He's filing his report to the Army Chief of Staff, who now ranks him and remembers him and is the Chief of Staff. Okay. And he doesn't want to lose his job. He suspects, as we would learn, that Sickles is not coming back. That's not that unusual. Sickles returns to visit the Corps in October, and the men cheer him as he rides through the camp. And he rides through the camp and out the other side and goes back to Washington. Says, "You're done." There is no field commander in the Union Army who has lost a leg. The Confederates have them all over the place. Right. We got Richard Ewell, who's strapped to his horse's saddle so he don't fall off of it. Right. But not on the Union side.
Yeah. So Sickles, are you talking in all of the Union armies? Yeah. So he's the first
he
Union general.
He doesn't come back.
But I mean, he's the first one to lose a leg.
Oh, I don't know about that. But none of them come back to field command. There are no field commanders in the Army who have lost a leg.
But Howard lost an arm.
Plenty of them lost an arm.
Yeah, but a leg.
Phil Kearny arrived in the Civil War with one arm missing.
Yep.
Plenty of them. In fact, when Howard was wounded at 7 days or 7 Pine, whatever, 62, Kearny went to visit him and said, when you feel better, we'll go shopping for gloves up in Washington.
I knew there was a joke.
No, serious. I mean, he was. I don't know if Kearny was really giving that credit a sense of humor. He was trying to make him feel better.
Yeah, probably.
Dan Butterfield. Yeah,
exactly.
That one of Dan Butterfield. All right, let's go. Todd Rhodes. He says, here are a couple of questions for Ralph. What could Kershaw and Hood see prior to the South Carolina troops stepping off on July 2nd? From the vantage point of where they stepped off, could they see the artillery arrayed along the south edge of the peach orchard and in perfect position to rake the flank of the South Carolina troops? In short, did they know what they were in for and determined to charge anyway? Let's start with that one.
They could see the peach orchard. They could see Clark's battery because Clark's battery was firing at Cabell's troops, at Cabell's artillery. So, they could see that. But the important thing is that Kershaw and General Longstreet could not see much past the Emmitsburg Road, because Kershaw will tell us that as his brigade advances to the Emmitsburg Road, to the Rose Farm lane, and the brigade is advancing with 5 regiments, so they're spread out, but sort of left of the Rose Farm lane. Longstreet rides out with him all the way to the Emmitsburg Road. Why? Because he can't see. He wants to see Hood's attack has gone off the rails. He was supposed to come up the Emmitsburg Road and hit the peach orchard. Well, now I can't even see where his attack is going. And that's why Longstreet rides up. He rides up with Kershaw's brigade, and somewhere on the Rose Farm lane, he directs Kershaw to divide his brigade.
Okay.
So Kershaw will only attack the peach orchard with half of his brigade. while Kershaw himself will take 2 regiments into the wheat field. George Anderson's Georgia Brigade is about to get flanked by an attack of 5th Corps troops. He doesn't know who they are, but he sees them moving across the Stony Hill, and he sends Kershaw to deal with them before they flank Anderson's brigade.
Okay.
If that unit, which wouldn't be large enough to really smash Anderson's brigade, but nobody knows that. They don't know how many men there are. Is it 800? Is it 4,000? They just see a force moving. If they had rolled up Anderson's flank, they could threaten Hood's entire division. Catch them up on the Devil's Den coming in their rear. Benning is hitting the Devil's Den. The Texans are hitting the Devil's Den. What if a big force comes up behind them underneath the triangular field? That's what that threatened to do. And Kershaw would launch into them to prevent that from happening. And on a separate tour that I do of Kershaw's brigade, my conclusion is at that moment, by splitting Kershaw's brigade, Longstreet gives up Cemetery Hill as the objective of the attack.
Okay.
The paper plan vanishes, and the need to support the men that are already in battle takes precedent.
Well,
my boys
sense,
are getting
yeah.
slaughtered in there,
Right.
and I'm going to send my reinforcement troops to save the guys who are already getting crushed.
Yep. The enemy has a say, right?
So the result, yes, and so the result is the attack that goes against the Peach Orchard, which is launched by 2 regiments and 1 battalion, the James Battalion, the 3rd South Carolina Battalion. It's an undersized attack, and the big 2nd New Hampshire and the New Jersey guns and the other guns that have pulled up are enough to stop them. So the 8th South Carolina and the James Battalion, who are attacking into the Peach Orchard, will be repulsed. 3rd Maine has a hand in that. 141st Pennsylvania has a hand in that. And they're driven back all the way to where they started. The 2nd South Carolina are the ones who make the particularly infamous attack. There's only so much room to hit the Peach Orchard. So they're to the right, and they're actually attacking the Wheatfield Road. And that's where McGilvery's 2 batteries are ready to limber up and get out when the South Carolina regiment stops and turns to the right because of a confusion in orders.
Okay.
And they get murdered. And most of us think those famous Harvest of Death photographs that people can argue about, oh, no, it's over on,
Yeah.
it's over by the Lee's headquarters. What a coincidence. Or it's over here. Those are mostly 2nd South Carolina that are getting murdered by McGilvery's guns crossing that ground.
Okay, I see. Yeah, not the ones that are in question.
No, including the ones that are in question.
You think those are down there too?
Yeah, I think they're all down there.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, but I don't want to get into that.
You were a great guest up until now.
Up until now. Okay. But there's a lot of photographs of dead guys. Over there. For the simple reason that was the hardest ground to bury people in, so they were the last ones to be buried, and the photographers showing up on the 5th and 6th are saying, hey, we want to get pictures of some dead guys.
Yeah.
Oh, then you want to go down to the Rose Farm. We haven't buried them yet because it's solid rock.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, that does make sense.
I've had farmers on tour from New Jersey. I worked with farmers in my career, and I've had farmers on tour, and we'll drive around and I'm talking about, Kershaw and the 1st New Jersey Band. They're looking at the farmland, and they're saying, how does anybody farm this?
I've always wondered that, too, with all the rocks around here.
Lord, you telling me somebody farmed this ground?
Yeah, in the old days, too.
Yeah.
I mean, you're using, like, oxen and horses and mules to pull shit, and how are you getting it? And this is very rocky around
now,
here.
I know Tim Smith won't be listening to this show.
No, he doesn't listen.
Okay, so because I don't want to get him upset.
Right.
But that's where Devil's Den comes from.
What?
For Teufelstein.
Oh, you're speaking German.
You're plowing, and they're all Germans here.
Right.
They're plowing the ground, and they hit a rock.
Right, and they curse
and they
say,
curse the rock, and that's the curse of the devil, the devil. Influence of the devil. Because I've now said unchristian things because my plow has hit a rock.
Ah.
And
so
the horse is also saying unchristian things. And so we're going to pick up this rock, and we're going to throw it on our property line. Yeah. And lo and behold, after 20 or 30 years, you've built a stone wall, quote unquote,
right.
which is just a pile of rocks.
Just a pile in a line
that forms your line.
Yeah.
And they called them the Verteufelstein, the Devil's Stones.
Devil's
because
Stone.
they caused me to say unchristian things that I have to now confess to on Sunday.
And how do you say the word?
Verteufelstein.
Verteufelstein?
Yeah. Verteufelstein.
I wish I could speak German.
I don't really speak German. I know a little bit.
All right.
And I think that's where Devil's Den actually comes from.
Oh, that's interesting. I've never heard that before.
Rocks, devil.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot of rocks over there. That's the Devil's Den.
That makes sense.
Because I don't really think that the indigo king snake or the rat snake are all called different things, that these farmers are in any way mystified or scared of the damn thing. They pick them up, take them home, and give them to their kids as pets, or they eat them.
Right.
They're
No, I always thought it was a little odd that it was a snake or whatever, and it couldn't be that big.
legend. Well, they can get pretty big, the rat snakes.
No, but I'm saying it couldn't be so big that it deserves to have a whole area named after it, and that it would be a deterrent against children going down there and playing.
And it fits to us because we're naturally afraid of snakes.
Exactly.
But not a farmer.
No, exactly. Well, no, that's the thing. Is snakes were part of. I mean, anybody that I know that lives out on a farm now to this day, they're comfortable around snakes and rats.
You
and
have
other
no
things.
choice. There
exactly.
they are.
They're there.
Whether don't be a farmer then.
Right. Don't buy a farm.
If you have an issue with snakes, keep the plow at the store.
I have issues with snakes all the time. All right.
Well, me too, actually, but I'm not a farmer.
Yeah, exactly. All right, hold on now. Eric wants to do something. What do you want to do, Eric?
I just wanted to break the video so it would save that clip just in
case we lose the power.
So just keep that in mind. It's not sunny out.
Right.
And we've been at this for like 3 hours.
We're burning daylight. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll go through a little quicker. Just give shorter answers.
Okay.
Just direct.
Sorry. Yeah.
It's okay.
It's all right. It's just
we would do a 6-hour show, but we might run out of power.
Yeah.
That's why, like every couple of questions, give me a pause. So I can save it.
Good. All right. Very good. All right. And just make sure that. So when you come back at the start of the video, make it a different shot. So in other words, go to the 2 shot so that it wouldn't be such a dramatic jump.
Okay.
Okay. You could do that. Start there.
Okay. Shorter answers.
All right. Okay. Now we're still on with Todd Rhodes. Here is another question here. So, all right. So,
do your thing.
Okay. All right, so Todd has another question here. Under fire, how long would it take an experienced gun crew to limber up and pull a gun out of harm's way, assuming they had enough horses and men to do the job?
I don't know. Pretty darn quick.
I mean, I would imagine if you're
stopwatch time. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think they could get the battery out in 5 minutes. Depends on the position of the guns. The doctrine is that the guns are supposed to be 14 yards away from each other, hub to hub. The reason for that is so that the limber team can get between them, and they have enough time to turn around, enough space to turn around without running into each other.
Right.
And so all 6 teams could go out, turn around, come back, limber up the gun. And a parade field in Washington where you're training, that'll work just fine.
Yeah. When
if the guns are
flying
closer to each other, if they're deployed closer to each other, then maybe only 2 teams can go at a time. So it might take 10 minutes to get all 6 guns limbered up and out. So that would be a long answer.
You can do that stuff pretty quickly when you do it repetitively.
I was going to say,
when I was a weapons squad leader, I could have both of my guns move 30 yards and in action on tripods in 25 seconds.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I believe that.
There's a lot more to that process than you would think, but you can do it quick if you do it over and over and over again.
And you're working as a team.
Yeah.
There's more than one of you, and also you're all not wanting to be right where you're supposed to be right now. You want to get out of there.
Also, under combat conditions, they can turn the limbers around. That takes a lot of guys because they have to hold the horses to keep them from running in the gunfire.
Mm-hmm.
They can turn the gun around, the limber team around behind the gun, and then by hand manhandle the gun back to the limber wagon.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're under, for instance, I'm almost positive that's how 1st New Jersey Battery B got out, because if any of their horse teams rode out in front of the cannons, they'd be dead horses.
Sure, yeah.
So there's that issue, and that would, of course, take a bit longer, to put it mildly. And, you know, you got to keep your horses on their feet. They could get out with 2 horses.
Yeah.
They carried, they had 6 horses so they could run.
Right.
But you can get out with less than 6 horses, but then you got to deal with the dead horses. You got to get them out of the way.
Right.
And so there.
All right. And then he just finishes off here. He says, I think I'm becoming a master of sneaking in multiple questions. Thanks again for the work you guys do on Addressing Gettysburg. Thank you, Todd. I appreciate that. A lot of people trying to get Mike Lentz's title of 6 questions, but I'm telling you that you can't dethrone the king. You can't dethrone the king. John DeMario, who I believe I met at the Gettysburger, and he bought dinner for me. That was very nice. Thank you, John. A few questions regarding artillery firing from the Peach Orchard to the southern end of the field. A good portion of the Federal artillery seems to have focused on the attack coming from the southern end of the battlefield. Many of the cannons are facing that direction on the battlefield today. Was this because of a lack of artillery on the southern portion of the battlefield? Do we know there are, we know there are only a few guns in the Wheat Field, Devil's Den, and Little Round Top? So
I got a little lost.
Okay, well,
the
so
southern
basically,
end of the battlefield has 11 guns.
Yeah, but he's talking about that section where the 9th Massachusetts Battery is on Wheatfield Road.
Yeah.
How it's just a line of guns there, but there's no infantry regiments. And there's that big gap there in Sickles' line, which is one of the flaws of his whole moving out there, right?
It is indeed.
Yeah.
And so that gap is filled by 2 batteries.
Yeah.
Which would ordinarily should have been filled by infantry. So there's 12 cannon, 6 Napoleon, 6 rifles, all Massachusetts guns that go into that position when Freeman McGilvery brings up his brigade.
Mm-hmm.
Are they plugging the gap, or are they just finding a space where they can shoot? You know, I think it's as much that they're finding a space where they can join in and have a field of fire in front of them without, the New Jersey guys are scary guys. And you don't want to hit them by mistake. And they're sticking out there on the Peach Orchard, so he can't get too close to them in terms of their range and field of fire. So he wants to be able to shoot past them. And he's firing over the Rose Farm, probably into Cabell's line, and then substantially when the Kershaw's attack comes, they would lay into Kershaw heavily.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
So, yeah, to some extent they are plugging the gap, but I'm not entirely sure that's what they intended to do. They're trying to find a field of fire.
Right, okay.
12 guns is a lot.
And Kershaw's given him his left flank.
Well, he will.
He will.
And Eric Campbell might say that. In my interpretation, they're out there before Kershaw has started to move.
But, I mean, anyone who is astute enough to be observing what is developing in their front would assume that some Confederate troops are going to be walking or marching
eventually
through that area.
We don't know what's going to happen.
Or coming towards it or whatever, right? You don't know. Right, okay. How much significant damage did the artillery from the Peach Orchard inflict on the advance of Hood and McLaws?
We know we have a lot of gruesome accounts from the 2nd South Carolina in particular, but of those troops who made the attack against the Peach Orchard, of getting splattered by canister fire and artillery fire. A lot of written accounts. So anecdotally, it has a heavy impact on that element of the 2 regiments and 1 battalion that make the attack against the Peach Orchard.
Okay.
Beyond that, again, it's almost like the question we talked about before. I mean, a doctor has 50 wounded guys. How's he going to tell which ones got hit by bullets and one's got hit by shrapnel?
Yeah.
Who can ever collect that kind of information?
Right.
But we do have men from South Carolina. Kershaw himself, who's in the area of the Rose Barn, will say that the canister is hitting the Rose Barn. Sounds like hailstones in a winter storm. Clattering against the
is that
barn.
4th Alabama?
No, this is Kershaw.
Oh, this is Kershaw.
Those are the South Carolina regiments, the 3rd and the 7th, which he's taken through the Rose Farm to attack into the wheat field.
Okay.
because that's who Kershaw goes with. So his account would be where he is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Stephen Byers is next. Why weren't the Confederates more effective in using the Peach Orchard as an artillery platform on July 3rd?
Too far away.
Too far away. Yeah. Okay, that's a good answer. Okay, Phil May. That's a new name, too. I don't believe I've seen that one before either. So welcome, Phil. Everyone knows that line of sight was the key for direct artillery in the Civil War. Was the area around the Peach Orchard visible from the Cemetery Hill, Ziegler's Grove area in 1863?
Yeah, sure. You stand there now, you can see it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even if the Confederates had placed guns at the Peach Orchard Plateau, didn't the batteries in the Cemetery Hill sector command that position?
Way too far.
I was going to say, like, it's probably the same argument as why to Steve's question.
Yeah, the Steve's question is, can the guns at the Peach Orchard reach Cemetery Ridge?
I think that's what he's
Which,
implying.
except for McGilvery's line on July 3rd, too far.
Right.
Cemetery Hill, oh, forget it. You don't even the Peach Orchard is like, what, are you kidding me? You need that 155 millimeter come up there, you know.
Yeah. Oh. Modern gun would be all right. All right. Rick Scarce, he says, I've got a couple of questions. Extending the Peach Orchard a little to include the Sherfy House and Barn area, at their nearest, how close were the closest opposing guns that were engaged at the same time, and which batteries were they? That's a good question.
First Rhode Island Battery E will put a section in between the Sherfy House and Barn. That's Buckland.
Okay, Buckland.
They will have a section that goes all the way between the house and barn. They are less than 500 yards from the Warfield Ridge line where Alexander's guns are.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the closest because they got the buildings for some cover.
Mm-hmm.
They're not there long, but they do deploy in there.
It looks like Ames is kind of close too.
Well, Ames doesn't get past the Peach Orchard. That section of Rhode Islanders cross the Emmitsburg Road.
Gotcha.
And go up past the house.
I see what you're saying. Okay. I see so they're out in that field.
Well, they can't go too far because the barn is covering them from the left.
Uh-huh.
So otherwise they're going to get a lot of enfilading fire. So they're literally between, but they have to be far enough so they can shoot.
Yeah.
But they're sheltered by the barn in particular.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that why the barn catches fire? Or do we
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. Well,
I don't. That's still a point. I can't even get it pinned down whether it occurred on July 2nd or July 3rd.
Did they attack one another?
Well, shooting at each other.
Yeah, I mean, but do we know that they were directly engaging each other?
The artillery?
No, the Buckland and well, did you name a battery, a Confederate battery that would?
Buckland was certainly shooting at Stephen Caper's Gilbert,
yeah,
artillery. That was the Brooks artillery, a South Carolina battery of 4 howitzers, because they suffer the heaviest losses on July 2nd. It's a battery of 75 men, and they have more than 40 killed and wounded.
Wow.
So they really get cut to mincemeat.
Yeah, they do.
They have heavier losses than Bigelow will have.
Yeah. How many horses killed?
They're not great at keeping. The Confederate reports, particularly in the artillery, are awful.
Are they?
Yeah. The War Department has things on its signs that people still can't explain where they got that today, where they got that information from. But
All right. So let's see here. So let's see. Did they attack one another? Lano on page 243 and 242 shows Buckland / Thompson's Union guns. That's what you said, in close proximity to Jordan's or Woolfork's. Is Woolfork?
Woolfork, Pishagrew Woolfork.
Yeah, okay, Pishagrew.
Great
I love
story.
That name.
Great story. Pishagrew Woolfork and George Moody, 2 battery commanders, going to face off in a duel. But Alexander said, "Can we wait till tomorrow?" That's one of the things with maps is time sequence.
Yeah.
Alexander will put one of those batteries, probably Jordan's battery, forward to shoot at Andrew Humphrey's line on the Emmitsburg Road. But they're not there with a Union battery in the Peach Orchard able to shoot at them. because they would have been right in front of it.
Mm-hmm.
So while the map might show that, they're not there at the same time.
And he has another question. He says, were any Confederate guns move forward into the Peach Orchard to support the Barksdale-Wofford attack or Wofford?
No, Barksdale's attack has gone through.
Right, okay.
The Peach Orchard has to be crushed first before the artillery can move up. So Barksdale's already turned and moving toward the Klingel farm. The 21st Mississippi is charging down the slope toward the Trossel farm. That's when Alexander charges forward with his 6 batteries.
Okay.
Remember, just like with tanks, you can't really run cannon into enemy troops.
Right.
Because you just may as well shoot your horses yourself.
All right. And then you need another pause.
Yep.
All right. And then we got 1, 2, 3, 4 questions left.
Whenever you're ready.
All righty. And Chaplain Cox, he says, welcome to the show, Ralph. I look forward to all you have to share. The 9th Massachusetts Battery is one of my favorite units in the battle. Can you describe what it meant to retire by prolong?
All right, you're under attack and you want to move back, but you don't dare limber up your guns because a limbered gun can't be fired. So retire by prolong, and this is these guns have these ropes, these prolonged ropes on them for that purpose.
Ah, okay.
So the rope gets tied to the limber wagon, the gun fires, and then the horses pull on the rope to pull the gun back from the recoil.
Now, is that the same as retreat by recoil?
Well, I guess you could call it retreat, but they call it retire by prolong. You're using the rope instead of having the gun. This way the gun can stay in action.
Right.
While it's dragging across the ground.
Yeah, the idea with retiring by recoil is you're just not wheeling the gun back forward.
Right.
But you're not actually connecting the gun to the limber with the prolong.
So it's just using the recoil as
But what Bigelow's
yeah.
doing is retiring by prolong. He's got those prolonged ropes attached to the limber wagons or to men.
To men. I was going to say, can you just hold
and
them?
they're all, so you use the recoil to yank on the gun. It's already moving. Keep it moving. And meanwhile, the crew runs along the gun, reloading it while it's rolling.
So wait a second.
Yeah.
So this is all in motion.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then it's like, stop now, we're ready to shoot. I think they can see it. The gunner, and then they'll stop and
so
fire.
So stop it long enough
now,
for it to
they're
fire.
firing canister or rotten shots, so there's not a lot of aiming going on.
Right.
It's like
And
roughly aim it at the guys who are over there.
Rotten shot is?
Rotten shot is when you load canister or a shell even, but usually not canister, I'm sorry.
Case.
Rotten shot is when you load case shot into your gun without a fuse hole. And so when the gun fires, the case shot explodes inside the barrel, and all the crap goes flying out the front.
Jeez.
You do that when you're out of canister.
Right.
They don't really carry a lot of canister. 3 or 4 canister rounds per gun is typical in a limber wagon.
So I would imagine that the odds are that you're going to need to use it.
Well, it's not used often.
Right. They're just not there.
You would run up with more canister from other wagons or from the case on, but in the case... we know that 9th Massachusetts is firing rotten shot.
Okay.
It's basically just don't fuse them, and they blow in the barrel. I wouldn't do that with a rifle. I don't think there's a lot of evidence, but the Napoleon is a solid gun, and they can take anything.
They can take it.
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy. Yeah. I knew that they didn't fuse it, but I thought it exploded seconds after leaving the muzzle.
The case is not a very big powder charge.
Yeah.
The case shot has a charge that's large enough to break the shell open.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
The danger, the lethality of the case shot is that the pellets are flying forward at 1,000 miles per hour inside the case.
Yeah.
You split the case open, and now the
still
pellets
going.
are still... Right,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, Roy Mead, he says, my question's for Ralph. I have read and heard on multiple occasions that Sickles always compared the Peach Orchard to his position at Hazel Grove at the Battle of Chancellorsville. Did Sickles ever write that? And was the Peach Orchard that similar to Hazel Grove?
No,
Thanks.
and not that I ever heard. I don't think... General Dan ever made a specific reference to Hazel Grove in connection with the Peach Orchard.
I think I've heard that.
A lot of historians do.
Yes.
I've been on the ground in Hazel Grove with an artillery expert. Yes, it's high. So is the Peach Orchard. That's the similarity ends.
That's it. Okay.
Hazel Grove is a bowling alley. The Peach Orchard is at the crest of a hill. that drops down on both sides. Hazel Grove is literally shaped like a bowling alley. You can shoot down toward the Chancellorsville house, but you can't shoot left or right, and behind you are trees.
Understood. I see what you're saying.
So once Alexander got up onto Hazel Grove, he had a great field of fire north.
That was it.
Pretty much.
So the Peach Orchard's a little better in that
much
regard.
Better.
Yeah. You got 360 degrees.
And I'm not a disciple of the idea that General Dan riding up the Emmitsburg Road saw the Peach Orchard and said, "Oh, Hazel Grove."
Yeah.
I don't see it.
All right, and he just has a PS here. Ralph, your Peach Orchard guidebook is an excellent guide, and your tour on the anniversary in 2018 of the Peach Orchard was great, even if it was like 100 degrees.
Oh, I guess he was there.
He was there.
The Rangers came out, the law enforcement people came out and said, "We were going to cancel your battle walk if the temperature got above 94. And I go, "Really?" So, and then it occurred to us, we don't know how to cancel the battle walk. It's online. It's been promoted.
Right.
People are coming. What do you actually do?
How do you do it?
Do you drive around with a radio car? Your attention, please. The walk is canceled. So what they did is they came out with pickup trucks loaded with bottles of water. They were great.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, the Park Service people are top shelf.
Yeah,
especially law enforcement, top shelf.
Our people here at the Park Service are, I think, the best.
It was 96 degrees. We were sweating before we started, and everybody had a good time. We held on to most of the people. We crossed the Emmitsburg Road. I think 3 or 4 people collapsed of heat stroke, and they died. But except for that, we did okay. We buried them in the Wentz Farm Foundation.
Buried them where they fell.
See them. Well, we got to get them out of the road because who wants to see that?
No, but near where they fell.
But yeah, people were troopers.
Good.
They stuck around. They're handing me bottles of water. By the time we got to the Sherfy farm where I finished up, I was like really running out of gas, and people were just coming up handing me water, saying, "Yeah, keep going, keep going."
All right, Brian Duranick. Thank you, Duranick. Can you describe the contributing factors that led to the repulse of the Union batteries in the Peach Orchard in comparison to those later placed along Freeman McGilvery's line along Plum Run, which eventually helped stunt the Confederate advance? What?
Yeah, I'm not following.
Can you describe the contributing factors that led to the repulse of the Union batteries in the Peach Orchard in comparison to those later placed along McGilvery's line? I think
McGilvery's line stopped the infantry.
Yeah.
The Peach Orchard guns did not.
Right.
And so when Barksdale was moving across the Emmitsburg Road into the Peach Orchard, the guns had to get the hell out of there.
Right.
And I give the 141st Pennsylvania a world of credit there because I believe they held their line in order to get to give the guns the time to get out.
Yeah.
I just want to make mention of something real quick.
Go for it.
We've talked about the 141st PA a couple of times.
Yes.
And guess who that was commanded by?
A relative of yours?
No.
Who?
A former reserve.
A former Pennsylvania Reserve.
Oh yeah, those Pennsylvania Reserves are all over the place.
You love them.
Henry Medill, he took the first chance he got to get out of the Pennsylvania Reserves and get himself into a proper regiment.
I think he was 5th Reserve.
That was a Bradford County up there. Those were his. He was a lawyer, I believe, up there. Oddly enough, he's from Hunterstown.
Oh, okay.
But and then we'll say, and I actually used to say this. So he's familiar with the area, and then somebody pointed out he moved when he was 2. So ixnay on the familiar. I'm like, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I knew he was born in Hunterstown. I didn't realize when he left, and apparently he left about the same time I left Germany.
And I think also the thing with Brian's question is that McGilvery was in position towards the end of all that fighting when there were fewer Confederates. There was more disorganization.
1.5 regiments are hitting him. He's on high ground looking down a slope into the Plum Run swamp.
Right.
And those guys got to get across that wetland, and he's just plowing into them.
Yeah.
21 guns he has on his line. They're hub to hub.
Yeah.
And they're not going anywhere. And to me, McGilvery is the unsung hero because if those Confederates break through McGilvery's line, they can get all the way through to the Taneytown Road and split the Army of the Potomac in half.
Right.
McGilvery, in my estimation, vastly more important on July 2nd than other officers from Maine that we might mention.
Who we shall not mention.
Wow.
Yeah, but I'm an artillery guy, so...
Yeah, so Chamberlain can suck it.
Oh, I did not say
I'm
that.
just
I do
saying
not
that.
endorse that point of view.
I'm sorry.
To my friends in Brunswick, Maine, we love your statue. We love your museum. I wish it would be open after 4:30 p.m., but that's up to you guys.
And honestly, I really don't have that much of a problem with Chamberlain. I think if it weren't for Chamberlain, I wonder how interested people would be in the Battle of Gettysburg. I mean, he among others, is just as responsible as those others for the popular romance that we have with this battle.
If it wasn't for Chamberlain and the Irish Brigade, everything you buy in Gettysburg would be Confederate.
That's true.
All the T-shirts, all the knickknacks, all the plaques. Chamberlain and the Irish Brigade save us from being, Mobile, Alabama.
It was one guy and 500 Irishmen that saved America here, and everybody else was just here to support the rest of them. Yeah, I'm with you.
Hancock's popular too.
Oh yeah, but he's not Chamberlain popular.
No.
Chuck Critchfield with the final question this evening. Always interested in hearing a discussion about the peach orchard as an artillery platform. Even though I have stood in the orchard, I still have some problems visualizing how it is a dominating position. There's no question that is just a statement, and so yes, that is a good way to end it. We have explained, I believe you have explained, just exactly why that's a good artillery platform.
I'll give him a piece of advice.
Help him visualize it.
The driving tour included in Peach Orchard, a Gettysburg Battlefield guided tour. The driving tour, I forget the stop, takes drivers to Brook Avenue, right by the Brook Avenue sign. You know where I'm talking about? You go there, park your car by that sign. There's enough space to do it and get out, and you will see how high the Peach Orchard really is.
That is a great point.
From that spot is the most dramatic elevation to the Peach Orchard. It looks like Oak Hill.
Yeah.
I mean, it is
it's
high
formidable
ground.
looking.
It is high ground.
You can also just, if you don't want to find where he's talking about, you could just go south, like to the South End Guide Station, turn around, come back. And as you approach the Peach Orchard Hill, you'll see it. Jim, I think Jim was talking about this in that last episode where you can't see town, you can't see anything from there, and it gives you a good idea of what a hill it is. And also, go stand at McGilvery's line and look out there.
And also on the other part of Sickles Avenue where the 116th Pennsylvania is up on Stony Hill. But none of them are as dramatic as if you're standing at the Brook Avenue road sign. None of them.
I feel
that's true.
I feel like a lot of people have a problem visualizing what he's talking about because everybody is approaching the Peach Orchard, or for the most part, from the north.
Yep.
Where it's a gentle rise up, but that's because you're kind of running along the same ridge that it's a part of.
Yeah. If you and if you're coming from south or from West Confederate and you're turning on the Millerstown Road and approaching it, it's the same thing. It's a very gradual, gentle. Although
it dips down and back up.
Yeah, it goes down
Warfield Ridge
and
and the Peach Orchard are at eye level.
Yes,
the road dips down and back up.
Yeah,
but take those bike riders.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Who ride up from the base of Little Round Top up to the Peach Orchard.
Yeah, the crazies.
That's a hill.
Yeah.
They get up to the picture and they go like, oh man, who put that hill there?
Well, and that's the thing is when we first started Getty's Bike, we would go out. I would go out on the tours every day because I wanted to learn, and it was good exercise. And I'm getting paid to ride a bike. I mean, how great is that? So when we would go out there, the guides would often point out as we're about to turn left onto the Millerstown Road off of Confederate Avenue. Now pay attention to the slope that we're going to go up, because you're going to see why Sickles wanted it. And that works from really the reverse, too. If you're coming from the Union line, it's the same idea. And, it's next time you're here, who was that, Chuck? Next time you're here, Chuck, go out into the Peach Orchard. Just stand there and look in any direction, and you'll see exactly why it was a dominating position.
Particularly you look toward the Pennsylvania Memorial, which is more or less at eye level, and you realize that the Trossel Farm, and that's a big barn, and when you're standing in a peach orchard, you're higher than the roof of that barn.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it is an interesting place to go to and just consider all this stuff, to stand there and look out and consider it all.
And even if you don't buy the gunfight theory, it's a crackling good story what happens out there. These gunners within golf ball range of each other saying, "Oh man, we're gonna," and Alexander out there saying, "I'm gonna crush them." Look, they're right on. We're right on top of them.
Yeah, it's more interesting. I never realized. Are you going to write a book solely on the artillery there?
The book I'm working on now, The Peach Orchard, the Battle of Gettysburg Reconsidered.
Okay.
That's the text that this is accompanied to. Has a chapter entitled Gunfight at the Peach Orchard.
Okay, good. So you're going to go into more depth.
And it'll also have a sidebar that will explain the tech that we talked about on like why it's so difficult to shoot these things very far.
Sure.
And why July 3rd, while it was an immense bombardment, there's a reason why it's an immense bombardment. Lee knows the limitations of the guns. So I'm going to get 150 guns firing on the same acreage. Somebody's got to hit something up there.
Right.
And the fact is, no. The fuse problems and other elevation problems, they shot over.
Yeah.
There are guys on Culp's Hill who were getting hit by artillery from the back. That's an overshoot.
It's funny. I my friend's family owns a house that borders Culp's Hill.
Mm-hmm.
And years ago, they let us go metal detecting in the yard.
Yeah.
Or the property. It's pretty big. And just on their side of the fence, they have a path mode and everything, and we went detecting right up to the fence there, and every time we put the thing down, we pulled something up. And most of it was actually about like 50-50 artillery fragments or drop bullets.
Yeah.
And it occurred to me that those artillery fragments are probably overshoots, not from fighting.
Depending on where that farm is, because I mean the Confederates do wail against Culp's Hill from Benner's Hill, but not much.
But not much and not for much. Long. And
most of their fire was directed at East Cemetery Hill.
Yeah.
From Benner's Hill, the Confederate fire.
Yeah, I'll tell you where it was after the show's over. So,
but it could have, depending where the farm is, you could have gotten a lot of Union fire from different angles. Powers Hill was laying ammunition in there.
Yeah.
The two U.S. batteries on present-day Hunt Avenue. That's Napoleons were blasting into Culp's Hill from almost point-blank range.
But which way were they going? Were they firing?
They were firing into Culp's Hill kind of blind.
Into Culp's Hill?
Yeah, into the Confederate positions.
Okay.
This was after they'd been overrun.
Gotcha. I don't know. It could be. Anyway, that was fun and that was interesting, and it made me realize that there's nothing neat in war. Nothing is neat.
Yeah. The only thing neat are when we give tours, and write books, we create an artificial sense of order.
Yes.
That wasn't there.
Because you have to.
Well, kind of.
Yeah.
But
if you want to make it understandable,
people, you understand that Robert E. Lee would have benefited immensely from a battlefield tour.
Yeah.
With a licensed battlefield guide before the fighting started.
Yeah.
But the VC was closed that week. I'm not,
they were repairing.
But that actually is an important point to make to people, that we have much better vision in hindsight. Fog of war is amplified 100 times. You learn a lot about that talking to Vietnam veterans, class of 60s, 68, 72. Nobody knows you don't know what direction they're coming from.
I remember my grandfather telling me, we were talking about something that happened in World War II, and I don't remember what it was exactly, but his unit was nearby.
Yeah.
And this whole big thing had happened, and like the next day, they find out about it, and they had no clue.
Yeah.
It's just, you don't know except what's right in front of you.
And the individual soldier doesn't know.
No.
The field officer knows what the regimental officers are telling him. He doesn't know what's going on next door. And in the Civil War, this is amplified by the fact that, as Scott Hardwick so eloquently put on a tour that I went on with him, they're using the same communication systems that Alexander the Great used with his armies.
Yeah.
Couriers on horseback and flag signals.
Yeah. Nothing has changed.
Today...
telegraph, but they're not using it on the battlefield.
We have soldiers with laptops getting satellite downloads on the latest mapping image.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's a different world.
telegraph is no good on the battlefield.
No, and they're not using it. They're only using it to go back to Washington.
If it's not cut.
Right.
But I mean, on the Gettysburg battlefield itself, the intercommunication, how do I explain to another officer what we're doing, what you're doing, what we want you to do? One of the things I learned from a military tour from Tom Vossler, one of the battlefield guides, ex-Army.
Yeah, we had him on.
Yeah. And I try to explain this to people, is the concept of terminal orders.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't exist today. Well, limited. But back then, you get your regimental officers together and you tell them we're doing this, and that. You're going to do that. You're going to go that way. That's it. That's the orders. Now off they go. No opportunity to get new orders to them. They have to carry out and use their own judgment when things don't work out the way expected, which never happens.
Never, right.
And so you have a lot of individual initiative, which also means that I don't know what that guy over there is doing now.
Yeah.
Because there's no additional communications.
And then, like in some cases, like with the railroad cut, you can have two colonels working together, but they're completely improvising that. They're not ordered to do it.
Right.
I guess to be a pre-20th century, with all that technology, type of a soldier or officer in particular, you kind of had to be like a jazz musician. Like jazz musicians, they improvise, they play by feel, they play by ear.
And these officers know that.
Yeah.
They know that they're doing that. The commanders are telling regiment, the brigade commanders are telling regiment, they understand that the guy's going to kind of... So I'm going to give him options. I'm going to send him in a direction where he has different things he can do. This is especially true July 2nd going over the Emmitsburg Road, because they don't even know what it looks like on the other side, never mind who's over there.
Yeah.
Humphreys, General Benjamin Humphreys, 21st Mississippi, was supposed to go with Brigadier General Williams Barksdale, who turns left.
Yeah.
But Humphreys, who's in the peach orchard, he can't.
Right.
Because there's all this stuff in front of him. Granted, it's disarray, they're retreating, there's batteries trying to get out, but there's a lot of guys in blue, and they all still have guns.
Right.
And if he turns north to go with Barksdale, he's turning his flank on this force that might suddenly materialize into an organized force and come back at him.
Well, sure. I mean, if I'm looking at that, I'm going to think, hey guys, before we run, let's shoot into their backs for a bit.
They say, look at that. They just presented their flank, and you get a guy like Freeman McGilvery who's riding around on horseback trying to organize the chaos, and all of a sudden he's leading an infantry charge with 400 guys from 7 different regiments. Humphreys doesn't know that's not going to happen.
Right.
And therefore he can't. He's got to sweep the field.
Sure.
And he leaves General Barksdale losing one of his biggest regiments.
Can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs. Speaking of breaking some eggs, we're going to get going because we've been doing this 5 hours, 5-hour show today, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, it's not 5.
Well, we're gonna try to cull it down to 2. No, I had a lot of fun talking with you, Ralph. You're a great guest. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I remember when you were trying to say, I don't know if I would be good enough to come on your show, and I said balderdash.
I'm still scared by those other guys you have on.
Well,
I remain in living fear.
I think you rank up there with them all. You're with the best of the best. I thank you for coming on. I hope you come on again. Thank you all for sending in your questions, and thank you all for listening or watching, and we will talk to you next time.
Are you a reenactor or living historian? Or maybe you're a War of Rights player and want to bring esprit de corps to your team? Well, then you need the Badgemaker, the leading provider of Civil War and other historical badges and insignias. Mention this ad with an attached message in your order and receive a free surprise gift. I myself bought a metal 2nd Corps badge, and it always starts a conversation when I wear it. So hit up the Badgemaker at CivilWarCorpsBadges.com. Something for everyone and anyone.
Our hearts so stout have got us fame, forsooth 'tis known from whence we came. Wherever we go, they dread the name of Garryowen in glory. Instead of spa or drink down ale, and pay the reckoning on the mail. No man forget shall go to jail from Garryowen in glory. Instead of spa, we'll drink down ale and pay the reckoning on the nail. No man for debt shall go to jail from Garryowen in glory.